Why are you changing your tone of your voice?
Even as you're walking towards the counter, you are being observed. Why is that person shifting? Why is he adjusting? Oh, hey.
So that's a trick.
You get someone who's already predisposed in that direction.
Yeah.
They don't have to try hard. That's the general mean. The sort of person who cannot accept that things just happen. There's nothing of that sort.
Absolutely no way.
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't just happen. There must be.
So it's like Africans and death. You just can't die.
How?
No. Who did you talk to last week? Who did you visit? Okay. And that, no. The cause of death must be found. Yeah, but it was malaria. No. Before the malaria.
Yeah.
Hey.
Who was he in touch with?
Who?
Who visited him?
There's no question about you just died. No.
You
cannot just die.
Anyway, let's look at COVID-19 in numbers, okay? Fellow Kenyans, in the last 24 hours, how many cases have been confirmed? In the last 24 hours, 544 cases confirmed out of 5,259 samples tested. Of course, the males still the majority, 340 and 204 females. Number of deaths so far, 311, and recovered is 8,021. And the total number of cases is 19,125. Clearly shows that by Sunday we'll have hit the 20,000 mark. Number of samples tested, though, is still at 289. We have not crossed the 300,000 mark, and if going by just what we're doing, 5,000 every day, we still have a way to go before we hit the 5,000, the 300,000 mark. So this is how the country is looking so far. Number of infections rising within the community. That's showing that there's some serious community spread. Worldwide, confirmed cases 16.9 million and 664,000 deaths worldwide, while 9.8 million people have recovered so far. US is still leading in the number of confirmed cases, and this is 4.5 million, followed by Brazil at 2.55 million confirmed cases, India at 1.5, Russia 828,000. South Africa has 471,000 confirmed cases so far. And you can see the number of cases still rising, across the world. South African deaths now at 7,497, compared to the US at 152,845. If we look at the number of people who have recovered in the US is 2.2 million, and Brazil 1.78 million, and South Africa again 297 million have recovered. So when you look at cases per 1 million people, worldwide, we have an average of 2,000 positive cases per 1 million people, if we just look at the global average. But if we went to the States alone, per every 1 million people, 13,662 will test positive. In Brazil, it's 12,092. In Russia, is 5,649. South Africa is 8,016 per every 1 million people, which if you look at that kind of arithmetic there, you're seeing that USA per 1 million people, 13,000. Then Peru per 1 million people, 2,200. Brazil per 1 million people, 12,000. South Africa per 1 million people, 8,000. These are other countries that have huge populations. South Africa has 50 million.
The thousands sound very daunting, but if you do the maths and look at the percentages, they're low.
Still a low.
It is proportionately low, because a million, 10% of a million is 100,000.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 10,000, 2,000, 4,000. So they're still low. But what I find heartening is the seriousness with which the whole matter is being handled. Because there's a clear understanding, because of what we now refer to as a second wave, in anticipation of a possible third wave, is that if this thing isn't handled properly and you let it loose, it's with disastrous consequences. If you thought that you had seen numbers, those numbers multiply right before your very eyes, and you suddenly find that you are chasing after it. It is no longer within your control or within your grasp.
How do you distinguish between a first wave and a second wave? I mean, what is the wave?
I honestly don't really understand it fully, but from what I have read, what seems to be the discussion is this. There's the episodic period where the countries were first hit with coronavirus and they were responding to it. That was the initial, that one counts as the initial wave.
Wave one.
Then there was a semblance of control that was brought in, and it appeared that this thing was now being managed well. Then came in the opening up of the community.
So some relaxation of
again,
tight
yes.
measures.
The idea was to do it incrementally. That didn't seem to have worked. Now, as a result of it, the numbers shot up again. Wave 2. Okay. Now, as to whether now
so wave 2 comes in and suddenly becomes more.
It's a bigger issue now.
It's a bigger issue than the first one.
It's a much bigger issue than the first one, because remember, what had been happening before even the first wave, it's not as though it stopped. It was just contained. So now when you open it up, there is the issue of now new infections. And then you bring in testing, because the second wave came with the testing. You test more people. So you then discover that among these people who seemed okay or asymptomatic, many of them, a good number, are also now actually positive. Now, but what I haven't heard much discussed is whether the virus on this second wave has mutated.
Yeah.
That one I haven't heard much discussion about, because if it has, then you have a new problem.
A bigger problem.
Yes, you do.
A bigger problem.
Because the virus you're going to be dealing with isn't that virus you dealt with during the first wave.
Now you're dealing with a demon.
You're
The bigger demon.
You're dealing with a genuinely serious demon. Yes.
16 minutes after 6. So this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga. Nduwoko is away today. So we want to take a look at the weather shortly. And today, the weather and traffic, we want to do some crowdsourcing. So you tell us how the weather is wherever you are. And you'll also be telling us how traffic is wherever you are. Social media producer and guru, Brian Amlioto, is already asking you these questions on social media. Please respond to that. SpaceFMKE on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And then at past, he'll come and start just compiling what he's seeing happening on the roads. Shortly, we'll also be looking at what's happening on the weather globally. Good morning. Keep it right here. Today, it's going to be an interesting show. Hey, my friend, you're saying that it was warm yesterday. 6 a.m. The weather in Nairobi, 12 degrees.
Winter.
12 degrees in Nairobi. Kisumu, 17 degrees Celsius.
Woo.
Nyeri, 14 degrees. Malindi, we're going to be having some temperature rising to about 25 degrees today. Mombasa, 24 degrees. Nakuru, 13. Eldoret, 12. Kampala, 19. Well, Kampala is going to be a warm day today. I mean, that's already at 6 a.m. It's at 19 degrees. So let's go to other parts of the continent. Nigeria, 24 degrees. It's a bit warm there. Dar es Salaam, 23. Johannesburg. Guess, Johannesburg.
5.
Close, 6. 6 degrees in Johannesburg. Paris, 16 this morning. New York is going to be about 28 degrees. They're enjoying their proper summer there. The UK is 16 degrees Celsius. And coming back to the country, some towns around Kakamega, 15. So we are properly in winter this morning. That's the kind of weather that we have. So just to confirm, this is what the weather forecast is looking like. Just confirm for us whether this is how it feels wherever you are. 12 degrees in Nairobi, 15 in Kakamega, in Nakuru, 17 in Nyeri, 14. Is that how you're feeling it? Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Would like to confirm that this is the kind of weather situation that you have around the country. Good morning. It's 22 minutes after 6. All right, as we continue the conversation, we will be taking a look at the big headlines today, the big stories of the day. But before that, what's today's Proverb, City?
Eric, now that you ask, you are actually forcing me to rifle through my pages and
find it.
Yes. I thought this one would be particularly interesting for a day like today. And again, it's an African proverb. It says, you are beautiful, but you have to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
You have to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
Yes. Maybe I should repeat it. You are beautiful, but you have to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
Okay. That proverb has been overtaken by events. That's all I can tell you.
Indeed.
That proverb? Yeah.
That is the beauty of Proverbs, you see?
Proverb of yore.
Yeah, because this is a proverb.
The days gone by.
That guarantees that there'll be a little debate on the subject.
Okay.
Yes. Because if you look at, and I understand where you're coming from, once you talk about beauty, the issue of sponsorship comes into discussion.
Sponsor.
And the wherewithal with sponsorship.
And one, whether you can eat from that beauty.
One would argue that not only can you eat, you can also drink. And you can even be housed.
Okay. Okay. Let's get to the headlines. I think it's going to be safer for us to get into the headlines. Big stories today. The Standard has, how many headlines are these on the front page? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Big one. Stormy House defeats and Stormy House defeat stands Uhuru and Raila. Moment of truth. BBI's future may be at stake after rebel senators savored first victory against top leadership. With time running out, on Uhuru and MPs getting bolder, a period of political uncertainty is slowly checking in. Is that the case? Is that true?
You know, what is of interest is that if you talk about the three papers that one may consider, well, national papers, Standard, Nation, it's only the Star that doesn't have that as a headline. The Nation has a similar headline. You talk about Stormy in the Standard, in the Nation is political disaster.
Political disaster.
Yes, how Uhuru Raila cash law fell apart.
Guy.
Strong words. Stormy House defeat stands Uhuru Raila.
Basically, this is bringing the issue back to the top leadership and saying that they are the ones who have failed to rein in their leaders and their members in the houses to go with their personal wishes.
Eric, this now is a subject of even more debate than the proverb. Really? I have to ask that question. Really? These are politicians. These are political leaders. Political leaders often have a very clear idea of what they think they should do and what the people want. Any astute leader has a clear idea what the people want. Now, this juggling of party interests, whatever it is, the balancing act that they keep playing. So there'll be messaging that is for the public consumption. And there will be the dog whistle communication of, okay, Nani, that one was of course. Okay? Yes. So I'm wondering whether this falls into that category.
What do you read, though, when you see the intrigues in the Senate? 6 times they've attempted to pass a formula and they have been unable to pass that formula. Before the last session on Tuesday, Raila had released a statement in which the Standard says it was a vague statement, but it was a very clear statement because he had said clearly, I'd like you guys to pass that formula as it is.
You know, again, this is politics.
The president has not come out publicly to speak about it, but if you look at what's happening around those that we consider close circles of the president, then it's clear that the president also has no issue with the formula as it is.
Why don't we take this discussion and ask ourselves the question you're asking, what really is happening here? Because if you look at the detractors of what was supposed to be, are the more youthful senators.
Yep.
Not all. The people who have been touted as the front, the people fronting this move are the younger. So
it's the future leaders.
Yes. So
So
the question I would ask is, what are we seeing? Because they belong to different parties. One belongs to Jubilee.
Yep.
The other one belongs to Wiper.
Yep.
And you're asking, so have they put aside party interests and are now focusing on what they would like to claim as national interests? Or have they seen an opportunity to present themselves as truly national leaders and not people who are going to be pushed into partisan interests? Now, they seem to have convinced others to join that particular camp.
Yeah.
Now, for me, this, politically speaking, if I don't read too much into the possible intrigues, is a truly good thing. It's a truly good thing because you then have the sort of debate and positioning on issues that we very rarely see. Because you're saying that there are a group of senators who've said, excuse me, we understand party lines, we understand the discussion around what would be of interest to push agenda A, B, C, D, but we are saying, no, folks, let's pause for a second and ask ourselves a more serious question. There are all these things that we keep talking about which have never been resolved. And now they seem to be coming to a head on this issue here. Should this not be the perfect opportunity for us to at least start? We are not going to conclude, but let's start seeing how we can address some of these really thorny issues. And the person who brings it to the fore is the senator for Homa Bay, the same Moses Kajwang. Yes, who is quoted as saying, you know something? Those are the issues that have always been there, the issues of land, the issues of marginalization. You know, they haven't actually gone anywhere. That's what gave me the hint. And yet, if you look at the voting pattern, Kajwang voted with a yes.
Yeah, Kajwang actually is the one who seconded the motion by the majority whip, Irongo Kangata.
Yes.
And he was saying, before 2 p.m., I was not for this motion, but I have looked at it and I have seen what is being proposed. What is being proposed here is let's adopt the formula, but also let's change the start date, the commencement date of this formula to 2020, I think 2025, was it? And that's what was defeated. So Kajwang voted yes, but now later he's coming back and saying, you know, this basically is just bringing about those issues. It's bringing out the issues of marginalization and everything. And like you said, so Kajwang is one of the youthful ones.
Yes, but why I'm calling it a good thing, you cannot say it is the youthful ones versus the not so youthful ones.
Yeah.
No, it's a nice mix. And even if you look at the party affiliation representation, the yes and no, it's an interesting mix. This interesting mix is what I personally like for purposes of debate because I am seeing, again and I'm repeating, it's like ideas and thought processes are being brought into the discussion instead of the usual rhetoric that you listen to and you know, okay. It's politics, there's an agenda here, okay. I'm perhaps being simplistic and being over-optimistic, but anything that seems to strike this chord of the Mwananchi might actually benefit from this discussion, the Mwananchi may actually genuinely benefit from this, it chimes well with me. So therein lies my bias.
I think what we've seen in the Senate, especially with this vote and the kind of thinking that's going on, it's clear, like you're saying, it was not along party lines. There are ODM members who voted yes, ODM members who voted no, Wiper members who voted no.
It's a nice mix.
Jubilee, Tanga who voted yes and no. Jubilee, Kieleweke who voted yes and no. It's a nice, proper mix.
It is.
Which brings me to the question that I was asking. Looking at the two headlines today in the big papers, The Nation and The Standard, which is trying to bring the conversation back to the owners of political parties and therefore the owners of the political idea in the country. Are editors missing the point? Do you think the editors have actually misread this whole situation? They're trying to force it back into, these people should have listened to what Uhuru is telling them and what Raila is telling them, and not reading the signs that the members are not thinking about Raila and Uhuru. They're thinking about what is the best for the country and maybe the people and maybe ourselves.
Now that you mention that possibility really exists, because the headline could have actually read, are we seeing a new beginning in the thought processes of our political leaders?
Yeah.
Because it could very well be a discussion point. But remember, it's one of the things that I think is even difficult for us in the media is to change the way we do things overnight.
Yeah.
If Raila and Uhuru, and if we throw in Ruto or our political leaders, Kalonzo Musyoka, seem to be at the center of most of our discussions, we will read from that script.
It's always like that.
Yes. Even when it is clear that perhaps there is a shift from that script that we normally use, we will tend to go back to that. Because
this is the big newspaper editors trying to force our thinking to be around Uhuru, Raila, Ruto, Kalonzo, Musalia.
Yes.
And the leaders in the Senate are refusing to go with that thinking.
The Star has this information on page 4.
Same.
Page 4.
And what does it say?
It says, Orengo, Kenyatta to blame for cash formula stalemate. The statement that was attributed to
Senator Orengo.
Yes.
Saying, the president should be more
accessible.
It's about being accessible. But you see, it's bringing it back to them. How Uhuru Raila cash law fell apart. It's like they're the ones who drafted this formula.
Precisely.
It's not theirs. It's a CRA that came up with the formula. They took it to the Senate.
Excuse me.
A whole year ago. I mean, this thing was taken to the Senate on 30th of April 2019.
How long has this discussion been going on? How many months? Around 18, is it not so?
Yeah, no, they were not discussing it in earnest when they should have been
discussing it. They were joking with it, and time was moving along.
Yes.
And then at the last moment, they now want to rush it.
They now want to rush it.
Yes. You see, think about this for a single second. We look at what our colleagues in this business that we are in called the media, and this is one of those occasions when it can actually be said that they are encouraging the concretization of the status quo.
Yep.
Instead of bringing in a whole new discussion to this matter, they've decided to go with the usual discussions that we have around this matter. So you bring in the big politicians, the heads of the big political parties.
It's a big people.
It's a big people. And yet, if I understand this thing correctly, where the argument of the politicians who have been arguing for the no may have seen the light, we have an election in 17 months. Some of these people want to go back in one position or the other. How do you distinguish yourself? How do you stand out from among all the other politicians who are in the same arena as you?
Yeah.
Okay. The Standard even took it further with reference to Murkomen. It says, abandoned DP Ruto's brigade to tilt scale in favor of the Sakaja group now. Abandoned. Is that the only interpretation really?
And it's not even about whether he abandoned what would be best for Elgeyo Marakwet.
No.
It is what would be best for Ruto.
Yes.
Is it not possible?
It is as though this man cannot think.
Yeah.
And we know very well he can.
And then also saying that this formula is being pushed by Mount Kenya senators.
You know
another one. Let's take a break anyway. 25 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, today, traffic, weather, we are doing crowdsourcing. We'd like you to tell us what's happening on the roads so we can tell everybody else. And therefore, our social media producer, who is Mr. Brian Amulioto, will be here shortly to just gather around what you've said so far on social media and what the look of traffic is like at 25 minutes to 7. Let's take a quick break. Traffic is coming up shortly with Brian Amulioto, social media producer. Okay, so traffic is beginning to build up on the usual roads. Namanga Road at Kitengela, traffic was moving well as at 27 minutes ago, and that is likely to change anytime. It doesn't just take long. It can just do any time. It can change. Mombasa Road, 3 accidents just within Mlolongo. This has happened just this morning in the Mombasa Road, around Mlolongo, 3 accidents. And then the rest of the Mombasa Road coming into town is not looking so bad so far. Thika Road coming into town is not looking so bad either. I mean, the usual hotspots that we expect to start seeing traffic build up from the places where we have the speed bumps that's coming into town. Well, we'll see what happens there this morning, as well as Thika Road. That's Thika Road. Kiambu Road coming into town, also not looking so bad yet. It'll start looking bad shortly. So we're seeing what you are telling us is happening on the roads. People are just saying it's moving, especially Langata Road coming into town, and Gong Road into town, Juja Road as well into town. Not looking so bad so far. Let's see how this will be looking like in about half an hour from now. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're asking you to tell us what's happening on the roads this morning, and then we'll be reading that out. Good morning. All right, so looking at the big stories in the papers this morning, TSC is boarding 5 54 billion shillings. That's what a furious union boss is pictured here saying. The KNUT says teachers employ operating outside
Spice
the code of
FM, Malindi.
threatening industrial action in January. This is on page 2. We touched on this story yesterday.
We did.
Because it was a big headline in the nation.
Mature, intelligent talk.
Teachers who are, especially those who are members of NAT, are not going to benefit from the new move by the Teacher Service Commission to upgrade them in their job groups and give them more pay. Now, NAT is saying he's accusing the TSC of discriminating against teachers and refusing to pay them 54 billion approved by Parliament. The Teachers Union is also reprimanding the Commission for contempt of court and managing teachers outside the Code of Regulations and Ethics. NAT is contesting the case of 100,000 teachers who this month have missed out on pay rise when the TSC implemented the third and fourth phases of the 2017 CBA. It's threatening that its members will resort to industrial action and boycott classes in January when basic institutions reopen. 86,000 primary school teachers have been promoted as the TSC implements the last tranche of the 54 billion salary deal, but even a higher number is missing, nursing the pain of missed boom courtesy of a court battle between their union and their employer.
You know, then there's the issue of the relationship that each of these unions have with the Teacher Service Commission. Some seem to have complied, or the TSC feels they have complied, so they are on, should we say, chummy terms.
Those that have complied. Those that are not members of TSC have received. Those that are members of TSC are not receiving.
You know, this discussion could actually be a very easy discussion in understanding where the problem is so that it can be resolved. But the overtones that are now being presented have brought in a political element to it, and a seriously accusatory tone. Now, the moment that enters the discussion, should we say the sensible element in such discussions, could we argue will go out of the window?
Imagine.
Yes. And it doesn't have to. The combative stance may have its purpose and may have its use, and I'm sure those who have it may have very, very good reason as to why. But I would have assumed that these matters require those quiet discussions that are had outside the limelight of the media. Though I also understand that when this thing is in the media, is so that the membership can feel that they're being represented. And that enough noise is being made about their cause.
Yeah.
And yet the focus, in my opinion, should be, how do we ensure these teachers get this money? Because this is drama.
Yeah, it's a huge drama. And you're talking about very many teachers. I mean, this 54 billion shillings is a lot.
For those teachers, it isn't drama. It is real. They may have planned for that money. They may have, it's something that they believe is their right, and it is. And what we're hearing now guarantees that this money isn't going to come soon, is it?
Yeah. Listen to the kind of benefit that those who have reaped the benefits are feeling. People who are in previous job group B5 earning a basic salary of 21,345 have been moved to C1 with a salary increment of 8,000 shillings.
That's a lot of money.
They've also benefited from a new house allowance of 4,200, a commuter allowance of 4,000, and a hardship allowance of 8,200.
You know, that's 24,000 shilling increase.
Just like that. Just like that.
24,000 is a lot of money. Yes.
And then you're sitting there and you're seeing that your colleague has received this and you haven't. And the reason is, because you belong to NAT. You expect Sosion to talk the way he's talking. You want Sosion to froth in his mouth.
Actually, if that is the most effective way of handling this issue, then yes. But the truth of the matter is it was foreseen. This isn't something that was not foreseen. The argument that TAC is fighting Kenya National Union of Teachers, this has been a discussion that we've had
for a while.
It's been there for quite some time. So the issue is this. Who has the upper hand here? And if you're going into a negotiation, far be it from me to even suggest that I understand what is the best thing to do. But what I do understand is that certain positions have guaranteed that the teachers are not receiving what they should receive. That's what I can clearly see. So I would argue, what needs to be done so that they can actually get their money?
The conversation should happen. Let's look at another story before we take this quick break.
This one is in the Business Daily. Treasury to auction tycoons unclaimed 26 billion shares. Billionaire businessmen. Yes, this is just, Former powerful government officials and prominent politicians are in the long list of individuals who risk losing 26 billion worth of shares that have been surrendered to the Treasury as idle assets. The Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, UFA with the double A, has given the owners of the over 800 million shares up to the end of August to claim ownership of the stock. Why do I read this? You see, there are certain units.
Or what? Or they lose it. We had the CEO of UFA here, and he said once the money has gone to UFA, it stays there until someone can come and claim it.
Yes, that's what I was saying. If they're not claimed by the end of August, not claimed, they'll be auctioned.
So what if somebody comes out and says, all right, so I actually had not realized, I've never been contacted. Here I am. I'm a beneficiary of this estate and I want to claim the asset.
You know, from what the gentleman who was with us a while back told us very categorically, you don't really, in my understanding, you don't actually lose your money.
Yeah.
It is there.
It's there. The day you shall come and prove that you are entitled to this, either it was your name on it or you are a beneficiary, then...
Did I misunderstand? But there was no time limit.
No time limit.
This. No.
In fact, he used the word perpetuity.
That's the word he used.
So this is a bit odd and awkward to say that they've been given until the end of August to come
the authority has warned that it will sell the listed shares through the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So, are we reading misreporting? Are we reading sensationalism? Or are we reading a change of thought process and mind?
That would be interesting. That would be very interesting to
actually
find out.
The thing is,
and
this is
quoting, and it's quoting the authority.
Yes, it is. And the truth of the matter is this. It's unfolding, so let's wait for it to unfold further, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that.
But of interest,
let's
East African EABL profits hit 6-year low.
We'll be back on that.
Yes, let's.
Shortly. 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga. We're now looking at the big stories from this morning, what's been covered in the newspapers. All the papers, we have them in front of us, all the local papers. We'll also be looking at maybe some big international stories shortly. Keep it right here. We want to take a quick break. We'll be back. So EABL is they're announcing their results this morning. Some is already
It's actually a
being
very
previewed.
serious. It is serious because if you think of a 39% drop, the last time they argued that they had such a problem was in 2014 because they're posting 7 million from 11.8 billion. It was 2014 when they posted something like 6.
This is net profit.
Yes. So it is 39% drop is 40%. It is a serious drop. What I haven't read and what I don't see is what it is that they have actually done to mitigate in terms of lowering the cost of their product, because I know for a fact that beer is being returned because those who hold huge stocks who are unable to sell them, because after a while beer does go, but it has an expiry date. So the beer goes back. I'm certain again that this is a story that's evolving, and with time we will actually get to hear. But you see, all this is COVID related.
It is.
Yes.
COVID has hit the economy.
Yes.
And this being a social product and commodity, when you're talking about restricted movement, restricted socialization, you expect, of course, to see that this is going to happen.
Yes, you do.
So this is, it's very clear that you'd have expected to see this company recording drop in sales.
But I would
in
also
fact, they are lucky that they have recorded a drop in sales.
What
not cessation of sales.
What I would have also wanted to see is probably loudly and visibly what they had put in place to mitigate, because this was not unexpected. The trends were clear, even if it wasn't from Kenya, but elsewhere it was clear. So this isn't something that had a black and white color. It was universal, the same color. It was called COVID color. So you could see where this thing was heading.
Yep.
And it's a business entity.
Yep.
It has shareholders. I would have assumed that in the interest of the business and the shareholders, they would have put in place mitigation. You see, when I say mitigation...
Probably the mitigation is what makes the drop only 40%.
Yes. It would help tremendously if such things were actually made.
Because you can imagine that the fact of the matter is that there's reduced consumption.
Significantly reduced consumption.
There's reduced consumption, and it's caused by many factors. One is because of reduced incomes and therefore reduced money that people can use. Disposable income, right?
Yes.
There's the other one that is the restriction of socialization imposed by the government.
Yes.
So all those factors would come together and force huge reduction in sales and sale volumes for the brewer. Now the mitigation measures would be like, okay, so how do we come up with better distribution or alternative distribution? If people are not going to drink beer in bars, and we've been distributing beer as our main sales points have been bars and restaurants and hotels, how else do we do this? We saw them doing a very big digital campaigns where they were now working with these other companies that you can order online and the booze can be delivered wherever you are. They went into that. Maybe that has helped to mitigate.
Maybe it has. You see, I am merely going...
And then the other side of it is they also maybe took a decision that they're not going to impact any of their employees. We're still going to retain our staff. Wherever they are, we're still going to retain them. Remember, EABL did not announce
any reduction in the number of
employees.
Yes.
So all those things, we still have our costs. Our running costs are here. We cannot switch off our brewer. It's still doing the same. We're still paying our farmers because we had a contract with our farmers. So we are still collecting the barley and the hops and everything else from our farmers and the sorghum, and we are still paying our farmers.
I understand. You know, we are making a good case for the brewer. This is a case the brewer should have made for itself, and loudly, because they have the capability. By the time you have the sort of sales that you have, it means you're good at ensuring people know about your product and how it is in their interest to consume your product. By the same token, that same forward-looking thinking is what should have been employed in informing people about the changes that you're making. All these things, it's actually good, because then it feels that you are involving, because your consumer is your partner. You're involving your partner in what is actually happening in their business, because it is also their business, because they're the ones who ensure that you stay in business. Yes.
Let's see what comes out of that investor briefing that they're having this morning.
I'm sure something interesting will come out.
Whether they're going to explain themselves and say, okay, so this is what we had to do.
Talking of employment,
yes,
Kenya Airways is reducing the number of employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And unfortunately, it isn't really very good news for those who work for Kenya Airways. But we'll be discussing that probably at a later date.
Yep. The Kenya Airline Pilots Association has already, placed some advertisements in the newspapers, an open letter to President Uhuru Kenyatta on this particular matter of, staff reduction and reorganizations at Kenya Airways, and saying this is an ill-advised move. It also sounds like they support the nationalization of the airline, but they're saying that with nationalization, we should be able to shore up this company. The workers are willing to take pay cuts. We've already taken our pay cuts. We're willing to work like this. And this is not, it's ill-advised for telling us to take pay cuts. Over 4,000 families who directly depend on Kenya Airways are going to be adversely affected by these job cuts.
It is true, Eric, but what is also of significance is this. We are talking of nationalization, where in other countries, you will find that the government now not nationalizes, but it partners with that particular business entity. So it remains a business entity, but the government has an input, as in they finance it, they back it up. Many of the successes you hear, first of all, in the Far Eastern countries, it isn't as though their business plans are infinitely better than ours. No, it's their government support. Think of Korea, think of China, think of Japan. That is the thing that they can consistently rely on. Government supporting private business. And supporting it hugely. It remains private business, but the government, it has a problem. They call it a bailout.
Like what our government has been doing with Kenya Airways for the last, 15 years or so.
What the Kenya government has been doing with Kenya Airways for the last 15 years isn't quite the same as that. Because if indeed it was offering a bailout, it's not just money. It's restructuring and ensuring that money actually goes to where it does. But if you look at the activities that Kenya Airways has been involved in running the airline, they run contrary to any profit-making thinking that you would have in a business. Completely contrary. So you have to question and say, surely, if I was a person pumping money into this, I should have long said, no. The way this thing is working, then, forget it.
Yeah, but that's what the government is saying now. First of all, for us to change our partners and everything, first bring it home. It's not just like when your son is running some business and it's running a mortgage. Tell him, close that shop, come back home. Re-strategize, rethink, and then we shall approach this.
I like your positive approach to these matters. Unfortunately, mine is more conspiratorial. I prefer the conspiracy element in this.
I'm choosing to look at the bright side of life today.
I am looking at the bright side of conspiracy.
So we'll be speaking to the CEO of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association at 8 o'clock. He'll shed light on their thinking behind what seems to be the support for the nationalization of the airline, and also their objection to what has been announced by the airline as rationalization or redundancies, basically people losing their jobs. Coming up to 7 o'clock, this is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. CT, tell us today's proverb and explain it a bit.
You are beautiful, but learn to work, for you cannot eat your beauty. Now, you immediately told me that one has been overtaken by time. And my retort was, maybe so, but it is still subject to a lot of debate.
A lot, eh?
Oh, plenty. You see, when you look at the word beauty, you immediately think of, should we say, an appealing facial presentation. You probably think of a physical presentation. And beauty sometimes goes beyond that.
All right, 7 o'clock. Keep it right here for more. Okay, what's happening on the roads? Let's see what you're saying. What's happening on your road? It's a sleepy morning from Kiambu Road. Well, you are not on the road. You're somewhere around Kiambu Road. And that's what you're reporting that day as well. It's looking rather chilly this morning. Mombasa Road coming into town, there was an issue at Mlolongo, a couple of accidents there. But now that seems to be clearing up and people are moving. What's happening on Thika Road? Thika Road coming into town is also not looking so bad. Insurance companies are being put on the spot. There's a whole conversation this morning about traffic and transport insurance. What's happening on Langata Road coming into town? Langata Road coming to town is not looking so bad, actually. It's looking seriously improved. And then as well as Kiambu Road coming into town, it starts building up at the usual spots. And then maybe in half an hour's time, we'll be at the peak, at the height of this traffic. So we'll see what's happening there as well. Ngong Road, Ngong Road now has been redone. So the perennial traffic that's always been there around Lenana coming into the junction, coming all the way into the
You're
Prestige.
about, yes.
That whole area is now it flows significantly better
Oh,
than it was doing a couple of months
ago. It does. Even during the peak hours, it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a good road this morning. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a
2.5
place for
minutes
hard
after 7 o'clock.
truths,
Thank you very much for
debates,
choosing
and
Spice
elevated
FM this morning from wherever you are. If you're in Nairobi on 94.4, Karibu Sana, Mombasa 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, or Eldoret 96.7, or Nyeri 90.9. Makamoko Malindi 97.7. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM. Wherever you are around the world, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where we live stream. Or if you're in Germany, like our friend George, who says he's in Germany, and the road in Germany is very clear, just as the sky. And 12 degrees, he says, is very warm. He's watching us from www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room this morning is CT Muga and Eric Latif. How did we get here, CT?
Well, how did you get to a point where, when there's a vigorous and very encouraging debate on something that touches on the lives of all Kenyans, that is the funding that should go to the counties, and you have, should we say, an alternative way of thinking? Why is it then that it raises debate and further debate when the house in which the matters are being discussed is actually a house for debate?
Mm-hmm.
How did we get to a point where the discussion as to what is actually good for the ordinary citizenry as opposed to what is good for political parties and the bigwigs who head these parties, how did we get to the point where this is what took center stage? Are we then assuming that the political parties have the begin and end all of solutions that may solve the problems of the common man? Or are we saying that the alternative voices don't necessarily understand how it is that these problems can be solved? Or are we saying that in the absence of the blessings of those who are in top leadership, then things that we anticipate will help the citizenry cannot work? How did we get to this point where the focus on everything that we do centers around the political leaders as opposed to what the common mwananchi is supposed to receive and benefit from? Because this is why we elect political leaders, and this is why we have a government.
So we're not dealing with the meat, we are dealing with the skin.
Yes.
Instead of discussing the merits and demerits of the formula, we are looking at the politics around it, the alignments around it, whether it's an Uhuru and Ruto and Raila bill or formula, as opposed to...
But the discussion that has taken center stage, if you look at it, if we were discussing in all sincerity issues that have remained unresolved and how this particular bill was either going to exacerbate the situation or help resolve it, then the discussion would have been clear. but there are snippets of mentions. Oh, this one man, one thing is going to favor Central Kenya.
Yeah.
Key discussion.
Yep.
It is going to disadvantage the coast. It is going to disadvantage Northeastern. Another discussion comes in along the same line. This is something that has happened since independence. These areas have been continuously been marginalized, and the people who have benefited have been, again, Central Kenya. And you have to think and ask, excuse me, have we not in the last 7 years seen money being distributed to each and every county? Have we not seen that?
We have seen.
Have we also not seen or heard of or read of discussions that have said, this division of spoils that we have actually has worked against parts of the country that are densely populated? That discussion has been there, but it seems to have been shunted aside. So when you talk about marginalizing, when you talk about disadvantaging, do you then assume that it is only certain regions of the country that can become marginalized, that others cannot be? Are you assuming that just because of historical issues, people who had certain advantages because of the history cannot now be disadvantaged? Is that not what you're saying? And are you saying that despite the fact that lots and lots of money have been given to an area, that they still remain disadvantaged? How exactly do you pull off that argument? Disadvantage in my books means nothing has changed. You don't get anything. And if you do, it's a small percentage of what everybody else is getting. But that is not the case. You don't hear that discussion. What you hear is the politics, not the details of the discussion.
Actually, what is missing in this whole discussion is the fact that this formula was formulated by a commission that is mandated to do so.
It's their job.
By law.
Yes.
Created, paid by taxpayers, resourced by taxpayers to go around the country, assess what's happening around the country, and come back and sit down as experts on finance, on public finance management, on economics. Sit down, lock yourselves up in a room and say the best way to ensure equitable distribution of resources is putting these parameters in a formula. That experts would actually sit down and agree that this is what needs to be done. And then they come out and say, so we have come up with a formula that looks at these parameters, that gives certain weight on these issues, and we explain ourselves this way. Instead of looking back and asking them, so why? Why did you think of putting certain weight on this particular matter? Why didn't you consider the fact that, there has been historical injustice, there's been marginalization? Why didn't you consider that when you're coming up with this formula at this time, at this point in time? What is the thinking behind it? Instead of questioning all those things, we are looking at it's the politicians and their personal interests.
What is also of interest is that the time when the discussions around this were supposed to take place wasn't something hidden. It was in the public domain. These very same senators knew. And time was allocated by this very same body for these discussions so that people can bring out these same issues, these same issues that are now taking center stage. There's been ample time from the previous year to have had and hashed out these issues. But let me give you a little history here. Long before we even started thinking of implementing the Constitution, when we even had a ministry whose job was to help the devolution process, Commission on Revenue Allocation, among the many things it did, together with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, sought to bring each and every county in this country to an understanding of not only their roles, but to also beef up their capacity in understanding what the Constitution was, in creating laws, bills, etc., that would guide their functions as counties, and they did this over a long period of time. No county was left out. Meaning, the sort of thinking that goes into the very thing that they're doing, they introduced the counties to this. And they brought in, whether it was their speakers, whether it was the administrators, they were brought in. And these discussions were hashed, and they even had seminars, they had workshops for training people on how to make laws, how to understand the differences. All these things were done in great detail over a period of time, and external consultants were brought in. They brought in people who had some of the strongest legal minds we have in the country from our universities to be part and parcel of this team. So this is something that they did diligently. Now, whether the counties, after learning these things, maintained it and continue to build on it is a totally different discussion. But the capacity to have discussed issues that concern you as a county or as a region has always been present. Why must it take center stage when we need ratification of this bill? When it could have taken center stage prior to this, when there was ample opportunity for some of these things to have been discussed fully and thrashed out. You see, how on earth did we get to a point where clear-thinking Kenyans who are elected, Kenyans who are intelligent and even understand what needs to be done, political leaders who clearly understand what their people genuinely want, why is it that when it comes to decision-making of this sort, what we as Kenyans are then treated to is a very self-centered and selfish approach to a national issue? Why? How on earth did we get here?
How did we get here?
Yes.
How did you get to this kind of position?
This dismal position, yes.
Who is in charge of the national dialogue or the framing of this conversation?
Tell me, Eric.
Because it appears that there's clearly the framing of the conversation is coming from certain quarters.
Yes.
We cannot say that it is by coincidence that the top 3 newspapers today have the same headline.
No.
Or are pushing the same agenda.
No.
Showing that it's the president and the former prime minister and ODM leader who are the big losers here, who are the ones who have failed the country, who are the ones who are the owners of a formula. Because that is the narrative that is being spun here today. The nation is saying political disaster, how Uhuru Raila cash law fell apart.
Yep.
Stormy House defeat stands Uhuru and Raila. BBI's future may be at stake. Now we've brought in BBI here, and we are saying that these leaders were not listening to, the senators did not follow what their political leaders had told them to do.
The stars are 2-page spread on the same issue on page 4 and 5.
And says what?
Well, then they quote Orengo. They say, Kenyatta to blame for cash. Same thing.
It's all about, right? It's about Uhuru, Raila,
and or Raila and or somebody
Ruto,
else. Or and or
Wiper.
Kalonzo
Yeah.
and or I'm surprised they haven't thrown in Wetangula and Mudavadi.
See, Wetangula is a senator, so it's a bit but Musalia has been there. Remember the standard headline 2 days ago? Epic fail.
Yes. You see, the discussion around how we got here has to take us back to why it is we have all these bodies. Remember, we had a Senate in 1963, and we later disbanded it, but we had a Senate, an upper house and a lower house. And at independence, if you listen to the rhetoric that the politicians had then, it hasn't actually changed from the rhetoric they have now, except for a little twist. There are more words that are being thrown at the citizens and infinitely less being done. One could argue that at independence there was so much that needed doing that even the slightest movement meant change. Yes, but change wasn't supposed to come to an end. It was supposed to continue. It was supposed to understand that the population will continue increasing. The demands will continue increasing.
Yep.
And as a result of this, why do you have a new constitution? It's because of the understanding of the need for change. And yet, with that understanding, when it comes to making a decision that would be, as we say as Kenyans, a game changer, then you suddenly see some really confusing things taking place. The very thing that you think that these learned individuals who claim from the high heavens that their own sole purpose in life is to ensure that the common citizen benefits, and you see the activities confounding that particular notion completely.
Yep.
So you ask, what on earth happened and how on earth did we get here?
Yep. It's a big question to ask as we go into this quick commercial break and taking a look at the weather. The CRA came up with a formula. The CRA took this formula to the Senate on the 30th of April 2019. We are in 2020. This is more than a year ago.
Yep.
This is when it went to the Senate. The senators have had ample time to look at this. This was even before we had not the referendum, what's it called? The census, the national census was conducted. We started hearing the small murmurs on, one man, one vote, 1 shilling, starting at that point because they had seen the formula. But instead of thinking how to enact this, instead of starting to have the conversations and the debate and the discussions around it at that point, each political leader was looking at how can I ensure that I have more people in my county so that when this formula comes into effect, our people shall benefit. And then in the end, those that do not have significantly higher number of people in their counties will clearly come out to say that they are being marginalized and they have been left out of this debate. How did we get here? How did we get to a point where the conversation moves from the Senate, where the responsibility is to Uhuru, Raila, for example, Okay, how's it looking like wherever you are? This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're asking you to tell us how the weather is wherever you are around the country. And Nairobi, now in the 7 o'clock hour, the temperature is rising slightly to 12 degrees Celsius. Kisumu is getting to a point where it's going to be about 27 degrees at some point and 18 for now. Nyeri 13, Malindi 25, Mombasa 24. Nakuru, 13 degrees Celsius. Kakamega is going to be at about 15 degrees Celsius right now today and expecting it to hit 24 degrees Celsius at some point. Eldoret is 11 right now. Can you imagine? 11 degrees Celsius in Eldoret right now and expected to hit 19. When it's the warmest today, it's going to be 19 degrees in Eldoret. In Kampala, Uganda, it's now around 19 degrees and it's expected to go to about 25 degrees. Let's go to Lagos, 24 degrees right now. It's expected to reach a high of 29 degrees. Dar es Salaam, our neighbors, are at 23 degrees right now and expected to rise to about 29 degrees Celsius later on in the day. Johannesburg, South Africa, 5 degrees and 6 degrees now in this particular hour. Expected to hit a high of 19 degrees. Paris, France, 16 degrees for now, 33 degrees later in the day. New York is at 28 degrees now and expected to rise to about 31 degrees at the hottest point of the day. And in London, the UK, 15 degrees for now, expected to rise to about 29 degrees later in the day. And we're asking you to tell us how the weather is looking like in your neck of the woods. Roger Zaduda on Facebook says, it's very cold over here. Tuned in from Eldoret. JKIA is very cold. This is Omoriki Vincent Makori. From Kabras Ingwe, Police Junior Aretwe says it's also very cold there. Chilly in Nandi, according to Bernard Masika. In Tyrone says Bondo is okay. It's warming up, but it's also quite cold. So we're asking you how it is in Mombasa. Olo Caleb says it's quite chilly this morning. This is actually quite funny because Mombasa is right now at about 24 degrees, man. 24 degrees is not chilly. And then we expect it to rise to 28. So is this true? Is it not true? Tell us how the weather is looking wherever you are. Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. It's 20 minutes after 7. We continue this conversation asking ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where we are discussing revenue allocation formula for the counties and not focusing on the formula itself, not focusing on the people who came up with the formula, the experts who came up
Spice
with the formula,
up your life.
not focusing on what should have happened in the Senate up to this point between
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
About the formula and what should happen. Not discussing any of those, but now shifting all the blame and saying this is the Uhuru Raila law.
Mornings done right. 94.
If we say take a little journey down memory lane and go not into the too distant future, no immediately post-independent era, just 5 years prior.
Okay.
And we look at...
This is 2015.
Yes, just 5 years.
Okay.
And we look at what got us to 2015, and we look at all the interesting manifestos that political parties had with regard to how it is they hope to better the lives of the Kenyans. Remember, political rhetoric revolves around politicians telling us how it is they can make our lives better as compared to who was the person who was there before us, and as compared to all these people who seem to want the same job as they do.
Yep.
It's a very clear scorecard. And that scorecard, if you look at it, it is a really dismal scorecard, because on almost every single item that the government said they were going to do certain things, you will find there's a massive lapse. But let's bring in COVID, because now this one threw out everything that we had known and thought of, and the one thing that it brought to the fore is that we were unprepared. But we are not the only ones who are not prepared. The whole world was unprepared.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity to learn quickly. So how quickly did we learn? We seem to have learned quickly. We seem to have put certain things in place, and we seemed to have this pandemic under control. But right now, if you look at the numbers and the progression, it appears that the pandemic is overtaking us. And if you listen to the discussions that we're having, see, the Star has a headline, PS Macharia, where are the coronavirus? Now, where are the billions for corona?
Okay.
Now, the PS that they're talking about, PS Macharia, is actually our foreign affairs PS. Who?
This is Macharia Kamau.
He is actually Macharia Kamau, who has self-declared that he has tested positive.
Okay.
And this headline is derived from a WhatsApp message that is attributed to him when he was asking for all the billions that have been spent on this campaign. It's hard to imagine that at the point of contact where the disease actually happens, there is no system to make sure that we have access to proper care, and proper contact tracing is actually done to keep track of those who are not well or may be infecting others. That's his statement. That is a statement attributed to him. And he says, as far as he's concerned, I've done my own contact tracing, and I've informed all the people who I came into contact with the 10 days prior to my test, and since. They keep asking where to go, and I do not know what to tell them.
And he is a senior government official.
P.S. He said, the shocking thing is no one has been in touch with me about contact tracing except one NMS nurse who called on Friday out of the blue and said she would call back, and never called back again. Basically, she wanted to confirm if I was Macharia Kamau.
Oh, if you're... Why were you Macharia?
You're Kamau. Done.
Maybe
That's
she did not even know that this is PS Macharia Kamau. She just had a name, Macharia Kamau, telephone number, this and that.
If amidst rumors that there are people who have built ICU facilities in their own homes, they have booked private facilities, God knows in what hospitals, this is the senior most. If you're talking about a civil servant, this guy is the senior most civil servant in that particular ministry. And this is what he is being quoted as having said. Now, you take it down.
He sounds frustrated.
Completely.
He sounds completely frustrated and dejected. Basically, he's saying, I've tested positive. I would have expected some measures to have kicked in. Maybe I'd have expected information to be told, this is where you're going to seek care. This is, if you're going to stay at home and home medicate, this is what's going to happen. If you're going to tell us who you've come into contact with, but also we are going to do this by ourselves. This is how contact tracing happens. All this, none of this is happening.
Let me read further. It says, what is scarier is that my symptoms, should my symptoms become life-threatening, I may not have access to proper medical care because of lack of insurance or a facility or respond. After all, I don't even keep a doctor as I never really fall sick.
There you go.
COVID doesn't wait for you to have a history of illness to attack you. Now, if this is the situation that someone who is at the top rank of government is saying, and as you said, it's clear frustration, wondering what on earth. Because he's a Kenyan, he knows money was spent, he knows money has been given, and he should know because he is the PS Foreign Affairs. He knows how much money we've been given. He knows.
Let's start asking the questions. So, who is managing COVID-19 in this country?
It's Ministry of Health.
Okay, the Ministry of Health, the CS for Health is the chairman of a National Emergency Response Committee. The membership of this Emergency Response Committee includes other cabinet members plus the chair of the Health Committee in the Council of Governors. Right?
Yes.
These are the cabinet members, include Interior, of course, Information, because we've been seeing them standing next to Mutahi Kagwe, especially in the initial stages. The CS in charge of transport, the CS in charge of education, the CS in charge of foreign affairs in those initial stages when we're talking about the measures that we're going to take for foreign travel and all. And then the PSs are also involved.
Yes.
So Mr. Macharia Kamau is telling us that he has not been aware of what's happening. He's been focusing so much on getting us into the UN Security Council.
Yes.
Because that was his brief. That he was not really aware of these other measures that are taking place. And nobody, even in his ministry, seems to have known what should happen.
Yes.
So if government does not know what government is doing, how shall CT or Eric know what government is doing?
And what is alarming him is that there's this thing that NHIF brought in the discussion about we will cover this here, we will not cover this. He says, look, the story of insurance, it must be sorted out now, not tomorrow. Okay? He says, something is not right.
Of course something is not right.
And then he further says, people are allowing fear and xenophobia to drive their response to the situation. And our newspapers and some segments of our political class are playing into it. This is not the first epidemic we face, and it's surely not the worst, nor has it proven to be the most deadly.
But this is what he said earlier. That sounds like words that he had used earlier.
Yes.
When you had an issue of the airline coming from Gwangju straight into Nairobi, and it was raised and it was publicized, and people were questioning, and there was hue and cry. The response that we were getting from government, and I think
that was his response when that plane came in.
For foreign affairs at that point. He was
at
saying,
that point,
this is xenophobia. This is not the first pandemic that we're facing.
And it's not the most serious.
Well, it's not the most serious. Relax, be easy.
You've given it a nice 360 degree twist.
Meet other foot.
Foot meets other shoe.
Hey. Way.
But this one, I can actually understand how we got here.
Tell me.
This particular one.
Tell me.
You see, simply because he is a public servant, he's a civil servant. For someone to speak thus, we do not know the half of the frustrations he has actually undergone to be able to speak his mind this freely.
It has become personal.
It is, because he's saying, what on earth?
He is the one now who is ailing. It has become personal. And he's expressing his personal frustration.
Yes. And if earlier on he made those statements, the early days of COVID, well, he can join a whole array of people who said all manner of things about COVID and no COVID, plane landing, no plane landing. People said a lot of nonsensical things during that particular point in time. But as you said, the shoe hasn't started pinching yet.
Yep.
But he isn't alone. We have other senior civil servants who have had the same unfortunate situation. But they are small in number. The vast majority of people who actually are facing this problem, my friend, do not have the means to sort their problems. Literally.
They don't know what to do.
No, they do not know what to do, where to go, how to sort it out. They do not know.
We have heard about this from the very beginning, from the point of quarantine, self-quarantine, to government-mandated quarantine, to isolation, to being taken to KU, teaching and referral hospital, to being asked to pay 70, 80,000 shilling bills. We have heard this over and over and over again. And you'd have expected that by now some things would be in place. Contact tracing, we've heard now the government, latest pronouncements by the government is that they are getting frustrated because contact tracing seems not to be working. Well, they seem not to be doing contact tracing anyway, because if the only contact tracing they have done with a senior government official is some nurse from the Nairobi metropolitan region calling and saying, I just wanted to confirm that you are Macharia Kamau, and then that's it.
You know, prior to, should we say, the overwhelming situation that the healthcare service is now facing, Eric, they were doing contact tracing.
Okay.
And there are very many cases that were reported of people actually being traced from Nairobi to God knows which far-flung. They were doing
it. Was happening.
But we were also told that they're actually slowly but surely getting overwhelmed.
Yep.
They're getting fatigued. And they're getting frustrated because the very care that they should be given in carrying out their duties isn't being done. Now, we know how we got there.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. It's we basically just never continued to do what we were supposed to have been doing. Let's take another break at 29 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. How did we get here? How did you get to all these things that we are seeing? I mean, did we sleep on the job? Did it come to us like kifumba macho? Kufumba na kufumbua. We just found ourselves here. How did we get here? Let's take a look at traffic shortly. Good morning. What's happening on the roads? Let's take a look at what you're saying on social media. Thika Road has held each other. Kameshikana from Utali's side. And this person says it feels really good seeing your bosses stuck in the highway while you are moving very smoothly on the service lane. Surely. I love how we ignore traffic lights and then complain that our roads have no order, and this is a genuine concern actually being raised by somebody. And then let's take a look at Jogoo Road, bumper to bumper from Hamza through all the way coming into town. It's looking not so good at all. Mombasa Road opposite Signature Mall is a standstill. There have been 2 accidents just before Mlolongo Primary School. This happened a couple of minutes earlier, actually, in the previous hour. It's still causing a huge tailback on that road. The other roads coming into town, so we know Thika Road, bad. Mombasa Road, some sections, especially around Syokimau and Mlolongo, bad. We also know that Thika Road from this whole area of Utalii is looking bad. Kiambu Road, you expect it to be looking bad? Yes, it is looking bad. Langata Road coming into town, not looking so bad after all. And then Ngong Road, nowadays Ngong Road is the darling of very many of these roads in the city, not looking so bad. Let us know what's happening on the roads. 0719 012 600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. 24 minutes to 8 o'clock. Remember, the live stream is up. Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room this morning is CT Muga and Eric Latif. How did we get here? Just before we went to the break, we were looking at a story, big story on the Star newspaper this morning, and this is telling the story of the Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Macharia Kamau, who has come out to say that he has tested positive for COVID-19. He's doing well. He's, at home, right? He's going through home-based care, home-based management of this COVID-19. But he has several issues that he's raising. Number one, he is talking about the contact tracing, and how contact tracing, according to him, is not happening, because he has had to personally call the people that he came into contact with over the last 10 days, and he has alerted them, and none of them is saying that, yes, we have been called or we've been alerted that we have come into contact with somebody who tested positive. He only received a phone call from a nurse who identified herself as a nurse working with the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, and she only asked, I just wanted to confirm that you are Macharia Kamau. I'm going to get in touch with you later. They haven't gotten in touch later yet, but the bigger questions he's asking is, where are all these billions that have been earmarked for combating COVID-19, for information, for contact tracing, for case management in case I needed to go to a hospital? Insurance is an issue. I don't have access to insurance. Only NHIF has said that it's going to cater for NHIF members in public hospitals. Private insurance companies have said, well, you know what, this is a pandemic. We are not touching it.
It's in the same category as natural disasters.
Yep. This we're not touching. So it basically says, and there was also another story in the papers the other day, you fall sick, just prepare yourself at least with 80,000 shillings minimum. And there are places that you go into, if you go to private hospitals, it's in the hundreds of thousands that you're going to pay because the cost is high. And we even spoke to the CEO of the Nairobi hospital last week. He says the cost, I have to ensure that everybody who is serving you in the ward next to your bed is wearing PPEs. They're fully kitted. From the doctors to the nurses to the cleaners to the people who are bringing you food, everybody must wear PPE, and that is a cost that I pass on to you. It's expensive. Where are these billions then?
It is indeed a very valid question, but what is even significant is now when you consider that the entire process of ensuring that the management of COVID-19 is actually effectively carried out in the counties. Health being a devolved function, it follows, therefore, that a health issue like COVID would then be the responsibility of the county governments. But to add more fuel to this particular fire, the governors continue to wait for these much needed funds to run their counties. Now, this falls into the category of what you mentioned yesterday, the dishonesty. What has this discussion in the Senate got to do with the counties receiving money? What? Where is the relationship? When money they should have received last year, as you correctly put it yesterday, that money hasn't been disbursed. if we take it further, this discussion or the stalemate that we are reading about need not influence the money that the counties get at all. So why is it being put alongside this? Where is the relationship?
It will influence the money that they end up getting at the end of the financial year, but they can start with something. It doesn't mean that they have absolutely no access to a shilling in this month, especially July, at the beginning of the financial year. They can receive some money from the National Treasury.
You see, they are tying it. Let me just read. Nation, front page. Governors will continue to wait for the much-needed funds to run their counties after divided senators disobeyed their party leaders and voted to prolong the impasse over the revenue-sharing formula. What? You know, it's like some narrative is being peddled and it runs contrary to any reality or truth that we know.
The government is shutting down because of the Senate.
How false can you actually get? It's not true. It's not true at all. Now, this again begs the question, how did we get here? You know, it's like there's a certain mindset that has prevailed, and there are people who are insisting it must continue prevailing.
Yep.
At all costs.
Yep.
There's this narrative of this issue in the Senate is affecting everything else. Truth, it is not.
Yep.
It is not. This one portends more for the future, not the present. The present is clear, but no one is talking about the present and asking, excuse me, Treasury, where is the money?
Where is the money?
That should have gone to the counties before the previous financial year ended. Where's their money?
About not being able to pay salaries for June.
Yes.
How was that possible? That was the last month of the last financial year.
Yes.
Surely.
And there were no issues. These issues we're discussing were not for that
was
year.
Clear. The money had already been allocated. It had been decided. This is how much you need to get.
Why didn't they get it?
Why didn't they get it?
So,
or if they got it, how did they misuse it?
You see,
that's the other question.
It is indeed a very, very valid question, but it all coalesces around the same thing. How on earth did we get to a nation whose leaders seem to focus more on peddling untruths and repeatedly peddling untruths and forcing it so that it sounds like this issue that is being fronted is the truth when everything around it tells you it is not true.
Yeah.
And this is where we are.
Yeah.
So everything will be now blamed on this.
How we got here, though, City, I think, is we got here because we stopped asking questions. We stopped asking questions and we started following the, narratives being spun. Somebody sits somewhere and creates a story and, creates a certain narrative and we just follow it without questioning. We are at a point where it appears as if there is a crisis in the Senate. That, they need to discuss this now. Yes, they must discuss this now. Yes, they are already late in discussing this and approving that formula. They should have done it at least by the end of April this year. They should have done that. But why didn't they do it for the entire of the previous year? What were they doing? What attempts had they made to build consensus between the moment that formula was presented to them on the 30th of April last year by the Commission for Revenue Allocation up to the 30th of April this year? What were the senators doing? These are the same members who were in the same Senate last year.
And these issues were as imminent then as they are now.
And it was clear.
Yes.
It was clear even at that point that this is what the formula is seeking to do. It is now bringing in new parameters and giving more weight on other parameters, especially on parameters around population and lowering the weight on parameters around landmass. Why didn't they have honest discussions at that point?
All these issues, past, future, present, ongoing, they had time to discuss all these things.
All the time to discuss it. They did not discuss it. Even now, what we are seeing being presented in the Senate as, a push by the rebel senators and a push by the government senators, it's all about kicking the can down the road. Irongo Kangata's proposal was that let us accept and approve this formula as it is, but let us say that it shall not kick in until some 3-4 years down the road. That was rejected. The proposal by Johnson Sakaja, by his friend Mutula Kilonzo Jr., by their friend, the senator for Narok, Ledamo Lakina, is along the lines of, let us not adopt this formula as it is. Let us just carry over last year's formula and say that this last year's formula shall be applicable for the next 3 years. it is kicking the can down the road. You're basically saying that, we have received this information from the experts at the Commission for Revenue Allocation, but we are not going to consider it. It's too hot. We cannot deal with it. Let's just either carry on with last year's, or let's just take it and push the can down the road, and we shall not deal with a hot potato in our mouth. Come on.
Eric,
we need to ask the tough questions.
You see, let's ask these tough questions now. All these counties that are marginalized, as they say, or have been disadvantaged, as they say, did they suddenly acquire senators in the last 3 months, in the last 4 months, or have these senators been in parliament all along? That's why they are there. It is their job to have brought these issues that are pertinent to their counties at this forum and made a great deal of noise and pushed and said, look.
Even lobbying with the CRA.
Yes, but they could have done all that. Why are they blaming their failures now on other unknown factors? Because they have been in this Senate since they were elected. The occasion to bring up these issues has always been there. And they could have brought it. If it really touches on your people, they could have brought it. They've had ample time to mobilize, to lobby, to do all these things. Suddenly, it's taking center stage, suddenly. These problems, if they're there, they have been there.
By the time we are getting to where we are right now, we should be seeing the senators from the coast, from Northeastern, from Makueni, from Kitui. We should have seen proposals that would have looked at what can we do about this formula.
Not now.
By the time we were getting to April 30th this year.
Yes.
At least a year of them sitting together, of them caucusing and saying, all right, guys, so this is what CRA is saying. How about we take a proposal that says, okay, reduce this a lot of pressure on us by saying increase landmass instead of just giving us 5% on landmass. I mean, from 17% to 5% is too drastic. Maybe 10%, and then they should have come up with their own proposed formula. They should have said that this Team Kenya that they're calling themselves now Team Kenya should be coming up with a formula that says this.
Yes, and even giving us details, great details, of all the disadvantages that their counties have faced from whatever time, it doesn't matter from independence. Say, now, to write this is what we suggest, while considering also the larger picture.
The larger picture.
Did they do that?
That this is going to change, that we say that incrementally, reduce this step by step and increase this step by step, but don't do it so drastic.
Yeah, because this would have given us time to have done this and the other and rectified this and this and the other. Have we had that discussion?
We are not hearing that discussion. What we are hearing a discussion is on, do not take this formula as it is now, just let's carry on with last year's formula. That is shirking a responsibility. 13 minutes to 8 o'clock. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Now we want you to join this conversation as well. 0719 012 600. How did we get here? Victor Kigen says on Twitter, the government collapsed contact tracing a long time ago. The guys who were doing it were never paid even a dime. For us to effectively control this pandemic, testing, contact tracing, and isolation are the key. Money was released, but the elite took off with it. God help us. What do you think? How did we get here? 0719 012 600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
The Situation Room this morning with C.T. Muga and Eric Latif. How did we get here? We are taking a look at two main stories that we are pegging this on today. So one is the standoff in the Senate, the division of the revenue allocation formula. And the other one is a story on the Star this morning about the Foreign Affairs PS, Macharia Kamau, who has come out to say that I've tested positive for COVID-19. But with everything that has happened around that, now he's asking the question, where did the COVID-19 billions go? Because as far as he's concerned, contact tracing is not working. Nobody has gotten in touch with him to ask who has been in contact with. He has personally gotten in contact with the people that he has come into contact with, and none of them has said that they have received any call or any information from any government agency. Mercy says, COVID is a Mwananchi problem until the top dogs have it. Then they realize that the money that went to Mandazis should have been put to good use for the benefit of all. Shoe starts pinching. Shoe gets to the other foot.
The thing about these decisions is that they're representative. One, Mr. Macharia Kamau is in foreign affairs, not health. But it is catching up with him now. And he's not alone. There are other top civil servants who have also tested positive. COVID does not attack plants. It attacks human beings. And so long as you're human, your position in government or in politics is irrelevant. You are as likely a target as everybody else. And when you look after the interests of the Mwananchi, it means your interests are also looked after. So these questions wouldn't be arising right now. If all these things had been in place, these discussions that they're saying they should have had with insurance companies or NHIF, we have a problem. We have a system that is actually supposed to take care of people's health. It's called NHIF. Surely this discussion should have been had.
Even with the insurance companies, the regulator. I mean, this is a conversation that should have happened from the very beginning. We are going to see people needing care in hospitals. This will have a cost implication. How do we work together to addressing the needs of the people? We didn't think about this. Let's go to the phone line, 0719-012-600. Our friend from Nyamira, Wilberforce. Good morning.
Hello, Eric.
How are you?
A long time. Very fine.
It's been a while, yes.
Yes. Now, I want to say three things. One, number one, the standoff in the Senate. The problem to me is the day we began, like we are promoting guys from being a councillor to an MP to a senator to a governor to the presidency. That is where our problem started. Why am I saying this? As I've always said, a politician is a politician. And a politician will always think of what benefits him, as you were saying yesterday. They put themselves first before every other person. Now, the guys in the Senate, a good number of them are those guys who graduated from being MPs. Or from being other aspirants down here. To the point, guys had to sit down and agree. You've been vying to be an MP. Now the Senate has come kindly. Give me this. Go up. I'll support you to be the senator for this county. Then it is about you. Number two, we have a good number who didn't want to see devolution working. Yes, guys, let's not forget, right from the top leadership, I'm not mentioning anybody. You know what I mean? We have guys who said this constitution, this devolution was not supposed to be there within thick and thin. What then should they do? It is, if we have said not buying this car and you have challenged me and you have bought it, yet I am the only driver who is going to drive it, and the conductor is my brother, we shall simply take this car to the ditch and then make sure it is written off. So there are guys to me who do not want to see devolution working. So what are they doing? They want to frustrate everything. Why am I saying this? Is yesterday when you were talking about Moses Kajwang's sentiments, when he was saying the counties could be given 50% of what they should be having, at least to keep the counties running. Why are they not even being given what is rightfully for them, even for the last financial year, before all this nonsense came up? That is that. Number two, on the COVID money, Today it is PS Macharia complaining. If you were the one, Eric, someone would have come up and called the press conference and told us this money is well managed. We can give the breakdown.
Yep.
But since here is someone within the room who does not know how things are done in this house. This is somebody who comes up in the evening and finds a bulb broken. No one explains how the bulb was broken.
Yep.
So then he is now coming out clear and calling it out to his brothers. Hey bro, kujeni mnisaidia hapa.
Yeah, there's something
mke wangu na watoto ni kama waniambii ukweli. Then where are we headed to? Let me tell you for free, Eric, and we shall be here to see. The day we are true, we know how to live with this COVID-19, because it may not be going anywhere soon. Scandals will come up. And you know what? The day we threw out Kibaki's formula of 2003, the way he formed his first cabinet, when it was said Kibaki was forming a cabinet out of a kind of where you belong. You put where you belong. You remember when Raphael Tuju was being picked as Minister for Communication and Broadcasting? Because he had been a journalist and a broadcaster before, something like that.
Okay.
When Raila was being made Minister for Public Works, because he's an engineer. The day it was realized it has to be politics and politicians were made cabinet secretaries. That is why
we need to get back there.
Yes. We need to get back there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We can work. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you. Have a good day, Nyamira. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. How did we get here? I mean, this is a question we've got to ask ourselves, and we have to ask ourselves the hard questions so that we can start asking those that we have given responsibility over the running of government and the management of our affairs. Those same tough questions. Coming up to the top of the hour. In the next hour, we are going to talk about nationalization of Kenya Airways and the move by Kenya Airways to retrench a substantial number of its former staff. We'll be talking to the leader of the Pilots Association, who will be joining us on the phone shortly. Before we do that, today's Proverb, CT.
You are beautiful, but learn to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
You're beautiful, but learn to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
Yes, it only makes sense if you extend beauty beyond the pleasant physical appearance that people consider beauty to be.
We'll understand more what this proverb means, what the Africans had in mind when they came up with this proverb. Good morning. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 8 o'clock. Seems like there's some issue on Mombasa Road. This accident near Mlolongo Primary started a long time ago. Two accidents along near Mlolongo Primary School. That's caused a backlog around that area. And also still on Mombasa Road near Signature Mall, traffic at a standstill. I think that from Signature Mall, it's because of the accident up the road at Mlolongo Primary School. Then coming down Mombasa Road, the rest of the road is looking good. We know what happens on Thika Road, especially from Utalii. When you start reaching those bumps on Thika Road coming towards town, traffic starts from there. This morning, stretching all the way from Utalii Drift, the former Utalii Drift is the Utalii side of the highway. Not looking good. Kiambu Road not looking good coming into town. Juja Road into town not looking good. Jogoo Road coming into town is also not looking good all the way. So there are people who are even blaming people who sell wares on the highway and saying these are the people who are causing traffic snarl-ups, because you either slow down to look at what they're giving you or you slow down to avoid hitting them. Okay, whatever is happening on the road, let us know. 0719 012 600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter and Instagram. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other.
We
The
thank you very
Situation
much
Room,
for tuning
a
in
place
to
for
Spice
hard
FM
truth.
and The Situation Room this and every morning. Every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is the only talk show on Kenyan radio that looks at everything that's happening in the country and around the world in terms of matters of policy, of politics, of social affairs, everything in business as well. Malindi, Nyeri, Eldoret, Nakuru, Kisumu, Mombasa, Nairobi, worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We live stream the show on video. Let's talk about the airline industry, shall we? So COVID-19 has come. There has been a huge impact, and one of those that had to shut down, basically, it just shut down operations, was the aviation industry. Local flights grounded, international flights grounded, which means that the people who are working for these companies, if you talk about the local flights, the companies that were operating local flights, starting from Kenya Airways to the other airlines operating in the country, from JKIA, Wilson Airport, and other hubs, all of them had to be grounded. All airlines that were operating from the country and doing international service, from Kenya Airways going all the way to America, to Europe, to Asia, to the Middle East, to the other airlines that were doing just regional flights to South Sudan, to Tanzania, to other countries around the region, all of them grounded, which means that pilots were not working, which means that ground staff, ground crew were not working. Everybody else, the cabin crew, were also not working. Huge impact. Huge, significant amount of losses for these companies in terms of revenue, projected revenue, and this is now coming home to bite. Kenya Airways, as we spoke to the CEO of Kenya Airways a couple of months ago, and he told us, you know what, just before COVID, Kenya Airways was already in the red. And now COVID comes in, and we have lost significantly billions of shillings in terms of projected revenue. We are going to be in a worse situation. Now, coming out of that, Kenya Airways has announced that they have to do they have to declare some redundancies. They've got to let go of a significant number of their employees. Of course, that starts from management. It goes into the pilots. It goes into cabin crew and other cadres of employees. They'll be affected. The Kenya Airline Pilots Association, KALPA, has published a statement in today's papers in which it's sending an open letter to President Uhuru Kenyatta saying, look, we need to rethink. Help us talk to Kenya Airways to rethink this move and let us work on how we can ensure that the local aviation industry thrives. We have seen what's happening in the region. We have seen that, for example, Mauritius has had to shut down. We have seen South African Airlines have had to shut down. So those ones have left a gap in the market. And it's an opportunity that we can take to capitalize on that gap. We are seeing what's happening with the other airlines in the region. Ethiopian has taken advantage of this. Ethiopian is basically focusing on, all right, how do we take advantage of this? Rwanda and the Rwandan government are working very hard at, first of all, creating a regional hub in the country with the support from Qatar, and also with their airline, which is now being revived, being revamped, and being supported significantly by the government. They're looking at how they can capitalize on this. Uganda as well is doing the same. Kenya Airways, on the other hand, is talking about letting go of staff, and is talking about nationalizing. Let's talk to the CEO of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association, KALPA. CEO and Secretary General, Captain Mureithi Nyaga. Captain, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante sana.
You've heard the introduction that we've given to this topic that we're discussing this morning.
Yes.
The wars bedeviling the national carrier, the pride of Africa, Kenya Airways.
Mm-hmm.
The statement that you have issued today, the open letter to the president, and what you're asking that you want Kenya Airways to rethink. Just take us through exactly what you want the government to do.
Thank you very much for having me in the show. Basically, what we're trying to say is that we need to think out of the box. As you have rightfully said, and you look at our competitors in the region, they are basically taking advantage of this situation to expand and grow. And for sure, Kenya Airways they've been looking at how we have been conducting our affairs, and they are seeing an opportunity to seize. Now, if you look at where Kenya is placed geopolitically, we are very, very advantaged. The issue of having a hub in Kenya for the region is very, very alive. And we should be taking advantage of some of these things that we have. COVID is there, yes, correct. But we cannot say this is the time now we start now downsizing and becoming a smaller and leaner airline. I can tell you from where we sit, this will be basically the last nail that you hit on the coffin, because clearly we'll be finished. We'll not be able to survive because our competitors like Ethiopian Airlines, for example, will come over and take over the gap that Kenya Airways that would have left. And they will make sure we'll not be able to come back. I can tell you let's say, for instance, when they say you want to downsize, the vacuum that will be there will be taken over. You will not be able to recover because you see the routes, you see the rights to operate in certain places. And once you do that, getting back these rights, it's not automatic.
Yeah.
So you might find even now our own regional airlines operating us even to Kisumu or Mombasa, for example, or the areas because once you cease routes once you shrink, it means you cease operating to certain areas, which now these people will take over, and that basically will not be able to make us grow. And I give a very good example like South African Airways. Nationalizing without a plan will not help. If you look at the National Management Aviation Bill, it talks about the reason why the government coming in, it is to help Kenya Airways and the aviation sector to grow and become competitive in the region. That is one of the things that bill is talking about. Yeah. Because they looked at it, and so if we decide to shrink, it means that we will not be able to compete. South African Airways was nationalized, but of course now the bigger problem is that they did not have a plan. Now, what else we are saying as a CALPA is that the bill is fantastic. The government is on the right direction. We want to show them that the only way that can help Kenya grow is to expand, so that we can be able to be competitive. We can be able to now, we need to offer fresh ideas on how we can do business in Kenya Airways. And the problems that are there in Kenya Airways are things that can be fixed.
But Captain, when we talk about this expansion and the need to grow big and spread your wings wider, doesn't it start from a point of, first of all, review everything?
Definitely.
Review everything and be as lean as possible, and then now you're increasing on capacity that is required.
I think that is, if you look, saying going lean to me, that is, as I said again, the problem that will happen is this, that once you go lean, you'll not be able to, the competition as it is right now is waiting for us to make that move. Lean means, in aviation, it's very simple. It means that you shut down operation to a certain level. And once they come in, it means you will cede a lot of ground on where you are. And I've said again, it's not automatic you'll get them back.
Yeah.
That is one thing that people need to understand.
Can I ask a question, Captain? When you talk about a nationalizing plan or the absence of it, what, in your opinion, would be a good plan for nationalizing B to ensure that Kenya Airways not only resumes its former glory and profit making, but even becomes better?
The best way to do this thing is very simple. Have the right people in the right places. I can tell you right now what is lacking in Kenya Airways or in aviation sector. We are lacking subject experts matter in this field. One of the things we have said, and I can give a very good example, is we need to have the right people in the board. I can tell you, experts, people who know, who are experienced in aviation business, people who have aviation experience, various stakeholders, because Kenya Airways or aviation service, it encompasses tourism. It helps tourism.
Yep.
We have got agriculture, for example.
Yep.
So we need to have all these people who are representatives, stakeholders, people from floriculture, horticulture, hotel industry, people with aviation experience, people who have got aviation strategy and business management. That's the kind of consistency that you need in some of these people that run an aviation industry.
So you need such in the board, or do you need such in management?
You need such first in the board, so that now when you have these people, they can be able to get the right people to choose in the management. Because even in management, of course, you need to have that experience in running an aviation sector. If you look at Ethiopian Airlines, for example, if you look at their stock, if you go even online and look at the structure of their board and their management, you will see something which is very, 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 very clear. We have people with experience in the aviation business. Unfortunately, here in Kenya, it's not the same.
So, what kind of experience does the Ethiopian Airlines board bring?
We are looking
at the composition of it.
Mostly, when you look at the composition, they have a lot of people with aviation experience. Most of them are homegrown. We find that people, maybe most of them are pilots in the aviation, in Ethiopia itself. They rose with the ranks. They have done aviation management. They have risen all the way, so they understand the cracks of the matter of how to run an airline. For example, look at the CEO. His credentials are very clear. So this is not just somebody who was just plucked from anywhere. These are people who understand. They have been there. They have been in the system, and they understand how to run an airline.
Okay.
Most people might look at it and say, of course, Ethiopia, as a country is different, but we are looking at on the business model.
How do we compare this to Kenya, the Kenya Airways board?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Kenya Airways board right now, it comprises of various people. I don't want to get so personal about that, but in our view, if you look at most of the people there, most of them don't have much of aviation experience.
Okay.
Yes, and you don't have stakeholders that really matter to drive this aviation sector growth.
All right, so I know you don't want to personalize this, so let's just look at the previous 4 boards or so of Kenya Airways.
Yes.
The ones who've been at the helm of steering this airline. What kind of experience, in your opinion, and just be objective here, in terms of, you've talked about representing other interests that benefit a lot from the operations of an airline.
Yes.
What did we not have any of this? Have we not had any of this represented well in the board of Kenya Airways?
Absolutely not. What we have been having, of course, we have government representatives, which is normal because we have the Ministry of Transport and all these people. But you see, the experts have been lacking in all these boards.
Okay.
Most of them have been political appointees, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So we don't, and that is why we have seen that since the time we have been on a downtrend, and there is no solutions which are coming up to help steer this airline. Hence now, where it's reached now, the government realized, and so the best way we have to do this, we need to nationalize, because the debt that is there, or the way we have been operating, is not sustainable. Basically, it has just been a failure for the last couple of years.
Captain, prior to the situation that we are in right now, COVID notwithstanding, there was a period when Kenya Airways really worked and was a profit-making organization.
Absolutely.
What did we get right then?
At that time, if we looked at even the CEO then, was somebody with aviation experience. Somebody who knew how to turn around Kenya Airways. And that is a fact. So Kenya Airways only succeeded during that period because they had a business plan, which now, after the plan came to an end, because everybody has a 5-year, 10-year plan. When that business plan was over, there was no fresh ideas. So basically, Kenya started now going on a downward trend. And it started 10 years ago. It didn't start now. It has been a slow, grinding halt, but now we have reached a point whereby we have to do something. We have to change the way we do.
Are you saying we've actually hit rock bottom?
I can tell you, when you saw the government come and decide we have to nationalize Kenya Airways from being a private entity, it is exactly what you're saying. We reached rock bottom. But the surprising thing is that Kenya is a very strong brand. Is a very strong brand because even despite all the problems that we've gone through, it's a company which grosses. Like now, if you look at the last financial year, we grossed almost 129 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So how many companies in this country gross that kind of money, apart from South Africa, Safaricom?
True.
So you see, it is a viable entity.
It's a viable entity.
It's a very viable entity.
But when you say viable, Captain, does it also take into consideration our debt portfolio as Kenya Airways?
In fact, now that is what I'm saying. Now, if we look at, for us, what you're saying is that if we focus on the product, we have the right people in the mix with the expertise. The business is there.
Mm.
People love this product of Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways is a very strong. I have flown for over 20 years in Kenya Airways.
Mm.
And I can tell you we have traversed all over the world, from Africa, Europe, Asia. I know the business is there.
Yeah.
The problem is management.
And nationalization, you say nationalization is the silver bullet?
For now, yes. The way I've looked at the bill, it has all the right ingredients. Because the reason why the airline has been nationalized is to try and change the way we have been operating, the way we have been doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Because even the government understands that Kenya Airways is a very pivotal business entity for the country and for other people in terms of other stakeholders who are involved. And it is a very, how can I say, it's for the economy of this country.
But
Kenya Airways is a very strategic business model.
All right, so we hear that because you have said that now a number of times, that from where you sit, you and your members of the other pilots, you see that there's a viable business model in Kenya Airways. You see Kenya Airways is still a strong brand. You see that there's an opportunity for it to come back and fly and be a regional, the leader in the region or even Africa. However, let's look at the bill itself and the way that the nationalization is being proposed in that bill. And you're saying that the bill looks like, it's a good bill. The management of the airline, according to this bill, is going to be handed over to a new entity that will be chaired by the president, and it looks like it's going to be made up of security experts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way to go? Does that address the concerns that you have been raising now, that one of the reasons why we are where we are is because of the composition in our board and our management?
Well, you see, if you look at that bill, there is something called the council itself.
Yep.
And I believe that is where you're talking about the security. You see, now that is the government. Those are the people who oversee and have an oversight.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, there is nothing wrong with that. Because in all honesty, you cannot exclude the government from this. Because once you get nationalized, you are a government entity.
Yes.
So the council is there to provide oversight and is the supreme body, organ.
All right.
But now, the issue that matters here, it is the people who do the job matters. And that now comes up now to the composition of the board. That is where the real issue is. Our prayer.
So under the council, what's the proposal? That under the council there shall be a board?
If you look at it, there is the council,
mm-hmm.
which is now the top organ. And then now you're going to have a board which will now come and oversee the running of Kenya Airways, KAA, and the corporate body, the third one. So basically what you're saying is that we are going to have a board that now will oversee the business side
of aviation.
So the board, the national people should not focus so much about the council. It has to be there because, as the president will be chairman.
What is the proposed composition of this board that's going to run KAA, KCAA, and Kenya Airways?
Our proposal, what we're saying, is that we need to have now the right mix of people. We need to have people with, as I said again earlier, people with aviation experience, people with stakeholders from tourism. Tourism, talk about hotel, people from the agriculture sector, and anybody who adds value to the aviation as a business. And we have experts that can do that job.
Okay.
And and we can name all the successful airlines. They have put a mix of people that bring value addition to airline as an industry, because you cannot just focus on just aviation alone. You have to look at who propels the aviation industry.
Yeah, the value chain.
The value chain. So you need all these people in the board, so that now when you sit there, you can discuss and talk about, okay, fine, this is what I can do. This
Captain,
can be able to have a product.
We lost you there. So say again, please.
I'm saying, when you have all these people that are the experts in the various fields, they will be able to bring a very good mix which will help their aviation as a business.
Okay.
And this is also saying that now that is where that matters, the composition of the board to run these affairs of the airline in particular now, because I'll speak where I have the knowledge, especially in the airline and business. They can be able to add value addition. And we have seen it work in other airlines and makes sense. Because stakeholders, and I can give you an example like now, here you are, I have an aircraft. Somebody says, you know what, I've got tourists from this destination A, B, and C. You have a farmer who says, you know what, I want you to export my fresh produce to this country. You have now, these hotel people can say, you know what, we need these bookings for our guests coming from here. So you see, if you sit down there, you can be able to come up with a good system of working. Because I can tell you, that is what that sustains our airline. Business from hotels, and business from the when I say hotels, is the tourists, and of course business from agriculture. All these people from horticulture sector and the exports that we do, the exports of meat and all, etc., etc. These are the people that sustain us.
But Captain,
so we need to have a conversation with them.
Captain, up until 1995, the government of Kenya owned Kenya Airways wholly. It was in 1996 that it floated shares. But even then, the government has been the largest shareholder in Kenya Airways. Do I have my facts right?
Of course, the government has always had shares in the
Precisely. So we moved from government ownership, we went private, we were making money, and then we now want to go back to a model that didn't work and we had to change in 1996.
Let me tell you, our message as CALPA is of hope and optimism. We have to be optimistic and have hope in these matters. And the fact remains is that we know that, of course, the management of Kenya Airways, at the other time, it was a government, it was a parastatal, it didn't work. We had a very brilliant, when it was privatized initially, which worked very well. Then again, at some point, it went down again because, again, of lack of proper management. And I said, I don't want to get passed on to people, but I'll just sum it up. This with poor management decisions and management of the airline has brought us
to where we are right now.
Exactly. Because if you look at even the no figures don't lie.
All this has happened with government oversight.
Yes.
Yes, but now we are now talking to the government and we are asking them, the only way we can be able to help Kenya Airways or the aviation sector, we need to change the way we do things. You cannot tire from sending a message. You have to try. You have to bang the doors. You have to keep on talking to these people, because I can tell you someone somewhere out there will see the sense, because right now it is a point whereby we have to speak up.
What went wrong with the nationalization of South African Airlines?
Well, the problem with that, and from when I looked at the whole situation there, is that the airline was nationalized, but the management issue was on the management factor was not sorted out. Basically, they didn't have the right people, as I've been talking about.
Yeah,
it was nationalized. Money was pumped in. But of course, the people who are running the show,
well, political appointees whose interest
political
was
appointees,
serving the politicians.
Exactly. People's, I know so and so come and run this and that and that. So basically, even if you pump in money without the right people in the right places, it will not be a success story. And that is what you're saying.
Which it sounds to me that is a caution that you're giving the government, because what is contained in the bill right now does not give you that assurance that this is what is going to happen, that we're going to have a professionally run entity once we go national.
That is why because this bill is, once an airline becomes nationalized, becomes a Kenyan asset.
Yep.
You and I, our taxes.
Yep.
Are the ones that are the tax that we pay run the airline, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There will be public participation, whereby views from professionals and everybody else will be given. And this is why we are saying that now an opportunity has been given to us to give our expertise and our knowledge and the know of how we can be able to help Kenyans become a success story. Because I am very sure.
But you can always tell the intent from the very beginning, Captain. I mean, if the drafters of a bill have the intention of ensuring that this new entity is going to look very different from what we've had as a private entity, is going to look very different from what we had before as a national entity, and it's going to be a futuristic entity, then all those things would be included in the bill, such that you'll be looking at the bill and saying, all right, we actually can tick very many of these boxes. All we like to propose is a tweak here and there, maybe add this one interest or remove this interest because it will serve negative to the bill. Do you feel that the bill as drafted presently, before your input has been taken, is addressing those concerns?
It has addressed to a certain point. Of course, we have given our proposals on the areas that need to be tweaked, on the areas that need to be improved on. But generally, you see, that bill, the way it was drafted, that is just one view. But doesn't mean that's the finality, because we have a committee, the Transport Committee, which is in charge of this, which will be taking views and looking at how to improve the bill. That's a draft. It's not a final bill. So a draft means that is just a skeleton of how they look at it. Various people will come in and they will debate on various issues. Now, where we come in also, we have an interest and we would want certain things to be done in a different way.
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you, they are accommodating because we're going to have a public participation. Everybody will be given a chance. But from where we are, I am very certain and very sure the government is very, very eager to make this aviation, especially Kenya Airways, become a success story. I can tell you that for free.
Then the same government has sanctioned what you're now complaining about today, which is the staff rationalization and declaration of redundancies.
I'm not sure that the government is involved in this sanction rationalization. I'm not in a position to, but from where we are...
The government has representation at senior level in the board of Kenya Airways.
Of course. You see, the government has these people there. But also, that you see, we have got also other people. You see, the board itself is not just composed of the government alone. Huh?
True.
We have other people in there.
So what happens to other interested parties like banks, KLM, who also had shares in Kenya Airways?
Well, from that, the way the government has seen, from where I look at it, it wants something to become nationalized. Of course, the government takes over and basically buys off everybody, all the shareholders, everybody else. As for the banks, I don't know how they have decided to settle the amount of money that they I don't know how whether they're going to give them government bonds.
That shouldn't be difficult, given that it's the government. That shouldn't be difficult to settle. But where I'm going with my discussion is this. Emirates is owned by the royal family in Dubai, which means it's owned by the government. It's considered to be the world third largest airline in terms of destinations, etc., the parameters that the airline industry uses, and it keeps growing. What is their secret?
My friend, what I've been telling you over and over again in the show, they have the right people at the right places. If you look at the CEO of the Emirates Group, is somebody with a vast experience. If you look at how they have run Emirates, it is absolutely professional, all the way through and through. When you, for example, if you fly Emirates, you're in the first thing, by the time you land in Dubai, you have known about everything about Dubai.
Yep.
So they use their airline as a strategic tool to bring business to Dubai. They even they say if you buy a ticket with Emirates, they offer even when you land, they even give a limousine. You go to a hotel, you spend 2 days at a very affordable price of a nice package before even you continue your journey. Maybe even probably you're not intending to go to Dubai. Maybe you're going to America.
Yeah.
But they give you such a good offer that you say, why not? They use the airline to market their country. And that is exactly what Kenya has been doing. But the problem is that is the management issue.
It's a strategic asset.
It's a strategic asset.
Let's take a break. Captain Muriithi Nyaga. We want to take a look at what's happening on the roads and as well as weather. And then we continue with this for a bit. We are speaking with Captain Muriithi Nyaga. He is the Secretary General and the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association. And CAOPA has released a statement today, an open letter to President Uhuru Kenyatta. First of all, they are expressing their support for the move to nationalize Kenya Airways, but also at the same time, they are raising concern about a move by Kenya Airways management to declare that they are going to letting go of the number of the staff. This is what now the West
...24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
All right, nothing major to report this on the roads. But what we see is that Thika Road, of course, you expect all the way from KCA towards town, must be bumped up. I mean, it's bumper to bumper, just issues all over. But somebody's saying if you try and use a service lane there, KCA coming towards town, it's moving smoothly. Jogoo Road into town, as it was half an hour ago. Thika Road into town, just as it was half an hour ago. This is a peak of traffic. We just know that what's happening on the road is the usual. Nothing major to report. But if you see anything that we ought to tell everybody else about, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram as well. Good morning.
Traffic.
At 22 minutes to 9 o'clock, we continue our conversation regarding Kenya Airways, nationalization of Kenya Airways. They moved by the board and management to start making Kenya Airways a lean and more profitable organization by letting go of a number of staff. And we are speaking with the CEO of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association, Captain Muriithi Nyaga. Before we went to the break, Captain CT had asked you, what is it that is making some of these other airlines thrive? Emirates, one of them, told us it's having the right people at the right time and the right strategies. CT?
Kenya has had all those, but there's an element that I think we need to actually probably look at, and that is negative or positive government interventions or interference. Because when we brought in that group during the time of privatization, as we said, it appears that you had, again, as Captain Muriithi has said, a good board who understood and they were given a free hand to do what they know best. And we saw the results. And then what happens is the government again comes in and we have Naikuni. Okay? He won't mention name, I will mention. Naikuni comes in and the downward spiral begins. And it continues until he leaves. So, it isn't as though under Naikuni they were not capable people. They were. It isn't as though they weren't people who understood what they should do. They were. So, the biggest shareholder is the government. And this is why I asked about government role. Because they could be the positive input into the government and they could be negative through their appointees. Where they have a say which doesn't seem to help the airline thrive as it should.
They have a lot of influence in the board and management. And then that influence is what you're saying.
Yes.
If it's positive influence, positive energy is injected into the board by the government, things will work.
That's why I mentioned Emirates. It's owned. It is actually owned by the royal family. But the input seems to just keep furthering the business and making it grow and grow and grow and grow.
So, Captain, how do we safeguard the airline from negative influence by the government?
I think this basically has to go with candid engagement with the government, because they have seen when they put, as you have said, if you put positive energy into the airline, it will grow. If you put in negative energy, it will not grow. And so far, we have been, for the last 10 years, we have been in this negative environment because of not having the right people in the right places who are appointed in these various positions, from the CEO position and various people in the board. So basically, what you're saying is that they have the opportunity and the power to change things and make things happen. And the only way this can be done is through engagement. We have to keep on showing them this is the best way to go. Because I can tell you right now, I don't think they are happy to see the way things are going. The amount of money that they have sunk into Kenya Airways, which is taxpayers' money. I don't think this is a favorable position for them to be in. So the only way to do about this thing is to turn around this matter and start doing things the right way. Do we have solutions? Yes, we have solutions. Because we cannot keep on just whining and keep on talking this and that, being negative. We have to offer solutions. Are solutions there? Solutions are there. Are they ready to listen? I hope so.
But the question again is, you may have this particular individuals in the administration today who may, for some reason, be thinking positively and wanting to see things change for the better at Kenya Airways. Then you may have a new administration that comes in that may not really care about what's happening at Kenya Airways, and they'll come and bring back that same political interference. How do we safeguard Kenya Airways from negative political interference? How is there an opportunity to put this in the bill, for example, in the law?
Definitely, I believe so. And I think the Transport Committee is working very hard on that issue. Because once they are looking at all matters in terms of law, in terms of where we have the political interference, the issues that have the management issues, the political, the management, and et cetera, et cetera. They are looking at all these things holistically. And I know for a fact that some of those areas are some of the things which they are working on to make a change, because they have seen that some of these political interferences have really affected the airline. And hence lead to, of course, not having the right people to run this sector.
Are there some measures that you're privy to that you know have been discussed on this particular point?
Well, all I know is that for sure something is being done about it. Definitely, they are addressing all this matter. What you have seen, as I said again, that bill, that's not a. I saw that's a draft. That's a draft which was done by the Attorney General, and now from there, now you look at it, disseminate it, remove this, add this. As I said, that's just a body. So all stakeholders will have a chance to bring in and put in their inputs, including what you're saying now. The safeguards and the gates to make sure that this does not happen, because the experience is there and the facts are there. Yes. So I am so certain that definitely something is being done or will be done to make sure some of these things that affect or have affected the airline industry, especially Kenya, will be addressed.
Okay, let's come back to the issue of the redundancies and what the management has already announced that it's going to do. How many members of staff is management intending to lay off?
Well, I don't know how many people they tend to lay off. That's their business. But as far as we are concerned, where I speak on behalf of our members, we unfortunately had 22 trained pilots who are let go, which I think to us, we see that that was a very drastic move. Yeah. It was not good, because as it is right now in Kenya, we have a huge shortage of pilots. And with the resumption of the flights and ramping up of the flights going to happen, is going to affect a lot. So the rationale of even generally just even letting go of employees now, and I talk about the whole thing, to me it's not prudent, because already as it is, we always used to work with a shortage, especially now on the frontline crew, whether be it pilots or cabin crew. So letting go, I think, and downsizing is not the way, because you see now what is happening is this.
How many pilots does KQ have before these 22 are let go?
We're about 450 pilots.
So around 450, and then already by that time you're saying that you're already operating with a shortage of the required number of pilots.
Oh, definitely. Optimally, for us to operate in this airline, we need to have 600 pilots.
600 is what you... So the 22...
I'm just saying, for us to maintain the schedule of Kenya Airways, we need at least 600 pilots to operate optimally.
And with the letting go of these 22, what kind of experience did they have?
These are fully trained pilots that we had managed to get through a memorandum of agreement. We sourced from within the country people who come who are already experienced, and they were pilots who are, these are people who are working in other companies. Yep. So we wanted to boost to basically boost our numbers to help us now be able to meet the demand. And as it is, that's what I've said, is that even this issue post-COVID, I can give a very good example of the flights, and I know very many people have been asking, when are the flights resuming? Yep. People are willing to continue flying and going about their business. So we are going to go back, we are going to have, within a short time, you will find the demand will grow. And the statistics have already shown. Sometimes the aviation business, like not due to COVID or what had happened, it dips. But once it picks up, it is another animal.
Okay.
And you cannot, as you say, you have to plan ahead, because people like pilots, for example, you just don't go there and just find somebody ready there and make them ready at, I don't know, in a day or two. No. Pilots, I can tell you, a minimum to have someone ready to become productive for you in terms of, you need not less than 6 months.
for them to get to that
So
level.
what we're trying to say that sometimes you need to plan ahead. Don't wait and see when things are become now elephant. Then now again you come and start saying, "Oh, now we need people."
There have been very many allegations, not necessarily directly by the management of KQ, but by people who understand the operations on KQ, that the pilots especially have been serious frustration to the management and the running of the smooth operation of Kenya Airways. For instance, I'm going to quote a quote here from Nick Mwan, who has posted a comment on Twitter, says, before COVID-19 broke out, the Kenya Airways pilots had also contributed to the declining performance of KQ due to their constant demands for huge pay. And then the KQ pilots even had the audacity to block the management from employing foreign pilots for the Embraer fleet. How do you respond to that?
I think that is just being very political, and I think it's a very baseless argument. The issue if you look at it, pilots, we have never discussed issues of pay. We don't talk about pay. Right now, if it is about pay, we will not be taking the sacrifices we are doing at the moment. And these sacrifices not only for our members, is to make sure that the company survives. So I think that is just a very, I would say it is very baseless. It's not factual. We have never frustrated Kenya Airways. In fact, indeed, we always offer solutions.
Are you saying that CALPA and pilots of Kenya Airways have never demanded better terms?
Better terms of employment. Let me tell you one thing I can tell you. There's nothing wrong with demanding better terms. Mm-hmm. Would you like to also demand better terms where you are?
No, it's because you just said that you never demand these things. Better pay, better
exactly.
terms.
Yeah, you see, better pay, better terms is a right. But we have not, and I can tell you, in the last couple of years, we have not asked for better pay, better terms. We, at the moment, we understand where the situation is as a company.
Yeah.
And we are basically willing to help, whatever it is. But what I just want to make it very clear here, there is nothing wrong with demanding for better pay and better terms.
Did you block a move by the management to hire foreign pilots for the Embraer fleet?
I ask you, definitely we did. We have a lot of local talent in our country. Mm. Why would you want to go get foreigners and we have got Kenyans here who need jobs? Why don't we promote our own Kenyan homegrown pilots? So what makes you think a foreigner is better than a Kenyan? So
with a demand of 650, 600 pilots for you to operate optimally, how many pilots do we have, trained pilots who can take up these positions? How many do we have? What's the pool of Kenyan pilots that can be taken up to fill the gap?
I don't have the statistics, but we have many pilots.
Between the current 450 and the 600 that you require, the 150, is it possible to get all of them locally?
Absolutely.
Let me ask a different question, Captain. Do we have Kenyan pilots who work in other countries and in other airlines?
Of course.
So why then do we feel that we cannot allow other pilots from other countries to work within our airline?
I can tell you one thing. One of our principles and our mottos as CALPA is to promote Kenyans. We have to promote our own. We cannot promote other people from outside, yet we have our own people here. If indeed we had lacked anybody within the country to fill up these positions or to take up the jobs, then that can be another discussion, which is not a problem. Mm. But we have people in the country. We have our own pilots here who would love to fly for the national airline, fly the national airline. So basically, that's what I'm telling you. Our motto here is very simple: Kenyan people, Kenyans come first.
That is understandable, and I applaud it. But given the times that we are in, I don't think there's any airline on the planet that is working at optimum capacity. Now, what this means is that there are more pilots looking for jobs currently than we've had previously, meaning there is an oversupply of pilots.
But are they Kenyan?
Oh, no. Even with Kenyans, because if you're saying they've let go of Kenyans and you say we had the capacity, even if we reduce the number of pilots that we currently have, we still have more pilots than we actually need, than we can actually employ in the country, because we already have the numbers. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't put the pilots in a very good bargaining position, does it?
The issue here for us, I can tell you, and I don't want to deliberate, to belabor this point of whether we're in a good position or not, or in a good point. What we know is that if you look at Kenya is where we are. If we look at our business model, we should be, actually, we have the advantage and we have the opportunity to grow. And as it is right now, even the way we are, as the way the business is, we don't have a surplus or pilots. We don't. We have a shortage. So what we've been saying is that to ensure that now we operate the next step, because you see here we are talking about growing the company even bigger than it is right now. We need to look at all these things together. Have the right people, have the right numbers, so that we can be able to operate optimally. And this has nothing to do with money.
Okay.
It's just basically having the personnel to ensure that the business grows, because the opportunity is there.
As you raise the issue now, already a number of your staff have already been told to go home. Their positions have been declared redundant. And you're saying that looking into the future, you're going into the nationalization, and the airline will be able to grow and should be able to grow to accommodate all the pilots that need jobs, especially the local pilots. But as we stand here today, the management, the Kenya Airways is a private entity. It's a listed company. It is in financial trouble. What should the management do if you don't want them to let go of some of this stuff to cut its costs?
I can tell you there was this tripartite agreement which was signed between the Ministry of Labour and Court 2 and FKE, where I don't think they have exhausted all the mechanisms that are there to ensure jobs are retained. Because we are looking at, I can tell you one thing, there is an issue about, of course, most of these people who have been let go, people, of course, have gone on a salary cut.
Yeah.
You can look at options of unpaid leave, etc. So, what I'm saying, the boxes they have not ticked all the boxes to reach a point whereby you start now sending people home.
So this should have been the last resort, and you don't believe that you have arrived at this point yet?
We were far from it.
Okay.
Far from it. Yes, very far from it. They just jumped the gun, and I think it is unfortunate that has happened. But as I say, choices have consequences. So I don't know how they're looking at it, but I know for sure that to us that's not the right move. Yeah, we feel that basically the people that have been let go they should have been given an opportunity to continue serving.
Okay.
Because if you look at actually even one of the biggest things that the government is trying to do here is create jobs. Unemployment is a very big issue. So when you dump out people there, professionals outside there, are you really helping the country? I don't think so.
Captain Muriithi Nyaga, thank you very much for your conversation with us this morning, and Asante sana for speaking to us. He's the Secretary General and CEO of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association. We wish you all the best. We'll speak to you again soon.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
As we approach the top of the hour, CT, so the aviation industry globally has taken a big hit.
Massive, actually.
And the aviation industry is one that just operates on volumes.
It does.
It's all about volumes. You've got to have a lean business, and you've got to have serious good volumes for you to be able to survive.
Yes.
Do you see Kenya Airways recovering from this period?
I do. What Captain Nyaga mentioned, yes, if we find a good model, a good business plan that has government participation and with the right management and the right board, yes, it can work. But remember, 2/3 of the world airlines, this according to Serum, who are the researchers in this particular industry, the well-known researchers in this industry, and as published in the Time magazine, 2/3 of world airlines, 2/3 carrying passengers grounded because of COVID.
Yep.
Now, what that means is this. These planes aren't working. Now, a plane isn't a table where you just sort of like dust it and it's back to function. No. Repairs. There is so much work that will need to be done to even get these planes in good working condition again. So this is where now when government participation comes in, it becomes handy because the government will have the money. And the government has bigger and better bargaining powers than any private entity within the country.
You want a supportive government.
Yes, exactly.
Not a government that has individuals who will be looking at their own
interest and deciding what can we make out of this. Because this is what has brought Kenya Airways to its knees.
Our problem has been the government officials, the individuals in government who had the influence.
Yes.
Coming to the top of the hour, the next hour, let's talk about police brutality. Can we force the police to serve? We'll be speaking about this as we do that. Today's proverb.
You are beautiful, but learn to work, for you cannot eat your beauty.
Bas. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. Still nothing major to report on the road apart from things have just become an assembly. Assembly means parts are imported from Korea and then, they come and just chill here. So what is happening on hustle and bustle of 047 and 254 is what we are witnessing on the roads this morning. Thika Superhighway has been busy. Mombasa Road has been busy, especially the area around Mlolongo and Syokimau, just because of some two accidents early in the morning caused a snarl up, and that snarl up has taken quite a while to clear. Thika Road, that's sort of just said. Thika Road, as usual, is Thika Road. Jogoo Road coming into town as well has just been crazy this morning. Kiambu Road into town has also been crazy. But the good thing is that Ngong Road nowadays is not among those that are listed as crazy every morning. It is busy, but it moves. Langata Road as well, busy but moves. Anything that you think we need to alert fellow road users this morning. Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, and then 0719 012 600. It's Kenya's biggest conversation as well. Spice FM, Nairobi 94.4, Malindi 97.7, Nyeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret, 96.0 Nakuru, Kisumu 102.5, and 87.9 in Mombasa. We reflect the conversations that are happening in the country, in the region, and around the world. One of the big conversations this week is about, it's not just this week, it has been the constant conversation with our politicians. There's also our police service. And police brutality is an issue that keeps rearing its ugly head. Whenever you think that you've dealt with it, it comes back. The day before yesterday, there was an issue at the County Assembly of Nairobi where MCAs wanted to have a word with their speaker, Beatrice Elachi, because they'd like to...
A word or two.
A word or two. Can I have a word? And the speaker did not want to have the word with them.
Didn't want to hear the word.
Didn't want to hear the word, so to speak. So it happens that police were brought into this. It also happens that police came in and they said, no word shall be heard here. While we stand here, we want everybody to leave this premise. And you know what police usually do? They tell you to leave and they expect you to have left by the time they said leave. So people were leaving and there was, the whole hullabaloo. But we saw images on social media, on mainstream media, photos and videos of this particular incident where one lady was cornered by a group of male police officers, some carrying batons, others carrying guns, some carrying batons and guns.
Please describe them appropriately. Hefty, well-fed, vicious-looking
men.
Yes.
Human beings of the male species.
Yes, who then proceeded to demonstrate the level of violence that they are able to mete out on one single helpless lady.
Went to her, they cornered her, they want her to leave, but of course they have surrounded her, so she has no exit.
No, none.
And then they proceeded to rain blows on her.
And she was, remember, pushed, if we were to go by what we saw, she was pushed to the ground.
Pushed to the
ground.
How
was she supposed to leave? Through the floor?
Blows were rained on her using those batons. It was serious. It was bad. What did we hear that same day? We heard from the Director of Public Prosecutions, who said that he had reached out to the Inspector General of Police and to the chairperson of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, to commence investigations onto this. What did we hear from the Inspector General of Police? Zero. So far, what have we heard from the Inspector General of Police?
Zero.
What action has been taken on these police officers? We don't know.
Well, there's some report that the minister, the CS in charge of this, has intervened. There's a report. But then there's the issue of confirmation that isn't very clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
What exactly should happen? So yesterday, the CS for Interior, Fred Matiang'i, was speaking and he broached this topic, and this is what he said.
Are we going to get a contingent of GS?
You hear that? Basically, what the CS is saying is that we have hooligans, armed people at the County Assembly of Nairobi.
Okay.
Not police officers, eh?
Okay.
Are we going to be having to call police every time we have an issue at the County Assembly of Nairobi?
He has introduced a new topic. Completely new. Police brutality. Did he address what was in the media? Did he address what was in the social media?
He is bringing the other angle, probably. He's saying, look, we have got to tell the public the truth. That you're seeing one side. This is the danger of a single story. The single story is what you're seeing there. What happened
they suggest that this lady was armed.
What happened before this? What made the armed police officers to be called into this specific area is what you're not being told by the media.
Actually, it isn't the first time.
Are we going to get a contingent of GSU
and not in Nairobi
and ask
County?
Mr. Kanja?
Other counties have had similar issues. And the issue seems to have always been around the speaker. We had the same issue in Kisumu. We've had it elsewhere. Police were called in. So this isn't new. But in all these cases, what we witnessed the other day has not been witnessed. What I actually kept wondering was, those huge pieces of wood, are they standard issue for police?
To deal with such situations?
Yes, it's a standard issue. That
Probably.
So you ask, where are we going? County hall. Okay, standard issue. Everybody come and take your piece of wood, which is appropriate for that situation. Look, even if he's providing an alternative perspective, he should address the issue that is bringing about the discussion of the alternative. It must be addressed. He is the CS. He must say it categorically.
There are big issues and there's a bigger issue.
Yes.
There's a bigger issue on somebody who's been trained to quell such kind of situations and how they conduct themselves, how they handle themselves when they are confronted with such situations. Let's go to the phone lines anyway and look at it from the angle of the human rights. And we have the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya on the line, Irongo Houghton. Good morning, Irongo.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Irongo.
Also joining us on the line.
I'm glad to be on the show again on the same subject. Huh? It's not been 3 months, I think.
Imagine.
Yes, different example, same subject.
Same subject. Also joining us on the line is the person who brings this subject today to the fore, and this is the member of the County Assembly for Mlango Kubwa Ward in Nairobi, Patricia Mudeo. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning.
Patricia, you're speaking to us from your hospital bed?
Yeah, but I'm getting discharged today.
It's good to hear that. It's good to hear that. So basically this means that the doctors have certified that you have tremendously improved and now you can leave the hospital and go home.
Yeah.
This issue that we saw police officers who had cornered you. We also saw you addressing the media at some point later and saying, what had happened, how you were cornered, how you were beaten up by the police officers. They caused some serious bodily harm. Can you just describe for us what you've gone through in the last, let's say, 48 hours?
Apart from physical harm, what actually I'm struggling with right now is psychological, issues, because I'm trying to put together as to why they had to impound on me, because I was seated all alone and actually I was minding my own business. There was no room for dialogue. Immediately they got into the assembly lounge. The 4 of them just surrounded me and they were telling me to leave. And I was actually trying to tell them I cannot run towards the tear gas because I have a problem with sinuses. And he wouldn't listen. He immediately, actually, it's one of the senior officer who started it, because he took the baton from one of his junior and hit me first. And then I was like, what have I done wrong? Immediately before I even knew what was going on, he held me by the neck and pulled me down. And that's where he started kicking me. So rungus were coming from all over. Some were slapping me, kicking my head. Some were kicking my stomach. And I was just there, wondering what is going on. At some point I felt like I was going to pass out. Yeah, so when they realized there were media around, that's when they stopped. So when I stood up and ran towards one side, they followed me with a tear gas. So it was kind of a confusing environment and, terrified.
I can imagine. It's traumatizing. Sometimes we look at these things from a distance and we forget the psychological trauma that somebody goes through at that point. You do not know when it stops. You don't know what kind of harm they're inflicting on you. You can just feel the pain, the confusion, and you don't exactly understand what's happening. It must have been a very horrible experience for you, and we really apologize.
It was. I wouldn't wish it to happen to anyone, because it's I don't think it's fair being beaten like a thief. And I have 4 men kicking me from down, and all these rungus. I even tried to, there's one rungu that I tried to block my head, and I have a serious cut, on my hand. And I'm just trying to understand why they had to do that. I honestly can't get answers.
So, just so that we can also see if we can address what the CS Matiang'i is raising here. Patricia, what were you doing at the lounge of the County Assembly at that time?
One, we collect our letters from the pigeon hole.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd come to, one, collect my letter and also meet my colleague called Oyugi, Honorable Oyugi. And that's why I decided not to go upstairs. Let me sit downstairs, all alone.
At this point, several of your colleagues were also agitating to have a word with the Speaker of the County Assembly.
Yeah.
Where were they? How far were they from where you were seated?
They were upstairs.
So you are downstairs, they are upstairs.
Yeah.
You're basically not part of whatever is happening upstairs.
Yes.
And when they started throwing the tear gas, had the people who were upstairs left the scene?
No, they came running.
Yeah.
So, bearing my condition,
I
will not put myself into that trouble of, running towards the tear gas. And since I was not anywhere involved in all those, skirmishes, I decided to sit. I wasn't doing anything wrong.
And then, since then, have you had any contact from the police?
No.
Or from the Ministry of Interior?
No.
No statement taken?
No.
Irongo, let's bring you in here. You obviously you've spoken to Patricia before this, and you know the story and the background of what you're hearing. How would you, what is it that you would say about this particular incident, Irongo?
So I think, first of all, just on behalf of the movement and members of Amnesty International Kenya, just to offer our sincere empathy with Honorable Mudeo and Musimi. We watched the incident with disbelief and horror, and we extend our empathy because from what we could see that she experienced all of this in the course of duty. And I think there are kind of four issues that we need to deliberate on as a country, but even on this show this morning. And first is really that violence against women parliamentarians is a global problem, and it is sadly very alive here in Kenya. It is said that 26% of women parliamentarians have experienced violence not outside of parliament but inside parliament. Like Honorable Mudeo, 46 or half of them fear for their security, and we've seen cases in Brazil and in the UK with Mariela Franco and Joe Cox, where they have actually been killed while working in the service duty. And the second and third area really is around, that the police brutality in this particular case was actually quite different because the officers involved were very senior, and they are known. And I think there needs to be a focus on really what does it mean when you have very senior officers in Vigilance House involved personally in the violence. And the third one, really, I think we've talked a bit about the issue of political tensions within the county assembly. And there needs to be some strategy around how do we de-escalate the violence that is now spiraling in the Nairobi County Assembly, but also in other county assemblies in the country.
Yeah. It also raises the very many issues here of when you talk about the first two issues or so that you've addressed, the system itself, the police service, the government, and the attitude that it has towards enforcing laws or even de-escalating tensions, as you call it, with citizens, with unarmed citizens. Is this an attitude problem? Is this a training problem? Is this what is it that could lead police officers, for example, in this particular incident, to act the way they did?
I think the first thing to say is that there is no single story. That these issues are complex, and at the same time they're very simple. The complexity comes from different things that are happening at the same time. So first of all, if there is no human rights-based approach to public order management or to the management of public spaces, then you're going to see this level of violence. Just on a light touch, but I think it is a very sad touch that those batons that were being used are almost the size of electricity poles. Like, how would you bring electricity poles to police a county assembly? We know from the County Assembly's Powers and Privileges Act that the police should not even be inside the county assembly. They should really be monitoring from outside the precincts. But what we saw there was really a violation of that particular law. We also saw, the level of violence that was perpetrated is really, it's at the level of an assault. And I think the 4 officers, should really be brought before a court of law and charged with assault. And that's all that Kenyans should expect at this time. There is an obligation under the law that the Inspector General has to meet, and that is essentially that under our Constitution and under his, the National Police Service Act that he operates under, what happens next is extremely clear. First of all, that officers are not allowed to assault civilians. They're not allowed to torture them. They're not allowed to carry out corporal punishment. They must use non-violent means, first and foremost, and if they have to use force, it must be proportional. Every single person who saw that viral video could see that Honorable Muzeo did not pose a security threat in that moment. She could have been escorted off the property, and if she had committed a crime, she could have been arrested and charged with that crime. The level of violence was simply unacceptable.
What is interesting and alarming is that these appear, from the garments they were wearing, to be senior officers. So, if these are senior officers behaving this way, I mean, this question has to be asked again, Irungu. Would you argue that the police actually know what they're supposed to do, or is it that what we're seeing is what they know they should do?
I think, first of all, I think it's important not to blanket condemn the entire police force, 150,000 officers, but I think we have a real institutionalized problem and a behavioral problem with the police service. One of the officers, and it is now in the public domain, was James Moniki Dadi. He is a commissioner of police in charge of operations at Vigilance House. The operation was overseen by the OCS at Central Police, Simon Kirich. These are the 2 officers that are extremely senior within the police service, and for them to have presided over this this horror that we saw was just shocking. And it's a bit ironic because at the same time that was happening, roughly the same time that was happening, the Inspector General was actually releasing new e-learning guidelines on how to improve the service of our police. And I think my attention was drawn to one of the modules, and that module was a human rights approach to public order management. Now, as Amnesty, we completely support that direction. But I think we have to say that, there's no point having classes on these topics if they are not borne out in reality. If people cannot experience the benefit of these classes, then, to be honest, it is a waste of public money.
Irungu, let me justify why I am actually mentioning the police force wholesale. Do we have any records in any annals whatsoever where we've seen situations where violence is being meted by some police officers and others attempting to prevent them from actually doing this? Have we ever seen this?
We have seen cases. We saw the declaration of a GSU officer about a year ago for essentially refusing to be charged into a shooting of 2 suspects in Parklands. I think you remember that case.
I do remember it, yes.
You have to realize also that for every police officer that is interdicted and arrested, in many cases it is officers that arrest them, and it is also officers that provide evidence that go into cases that lead to their interdiction or dismissal, or even that their conviction. So I think that the thing is not to get caught in a single narrative about the police. It is to actually begin to identify those officers and that culture that is no longer acceptable under our Constitution. And we should note also that this coming month, in a couple of days, we're actually going into the 10th anniversary of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And it would be shocking that we go past this 10-year mark and we are still talking about police brutality. We are still talking about violence against citizens. Furthermore,
but why would you call it shocking?
Well, I think we have to not. I don't think we can normalize this. I think this is the first danger that the public has. Once this becomes normalized and acceptable, we give license to anybody in uniform, particularly those in new blue uniforms, to perpetuate violence that we saw in the colonial era, that we saw in the 1970s and 80s, And I know the Inspector General will not want to leave this legacy. So I keep saying, do not normalize this. This is not normalized. It is shocking. It is horrific. And we must condemn it.
Patricia, if I may come to you, first of all, my deepest and most profound sympathies to what happened to you. But as a leader, would you say that what happened to you is something that many Kenyans consider to be normal?
Yes, the area I represent Mlango Kubwa, which is in Mathare constituency. And one of my biggest challenges is extrajudicial killings and also police harassment and brutality. And it's been something that has been ongoing, and despite all the, independent bodies raising their voice, actually very little is done because they're not in a position to raise their voice. But now even this matter escalating into, assembly precincts where people regard those places as safe places to be, and actually unleashing such horror into someone who's unarmed. Then to Kenyans, most Kenyans, I'm looking at the comments, and to them it's just like, it's normal to say system ya majambazi.
Yep.
So, yeah, that is a question that we really need to ask and to raise. Why does it appear too normal? And also, when you follow up, also like the comments from the people who are supposed, to give clear direction as to why this shouldn't happen, it's like somehow they're trying to justify and direct the matter in a very, smart way of, making it
appear normal. Yep.
Appear normal as to why people are attacked. And I think as Kenyans, we demand to be given the right answers for the right questions.
Yeah.
This was not about the county assembly. It was about one person being attacked and she's unarmed.
Yeah. It's about police action in the course of their duty.
Action. And let me point out that it was the senior police who started this. The rest were okay, actually. They were just trying to, just get out. But he is the one who took the baton and hit me first. He is the one who held me by my neck and dragged me down. And he started beating me. So the rest joined. That one I have to state clearly.
It's a senior police officer who basically just came and
set the example.
Yes.
Set the example for the juniors on what the juniors were supposed to do.
As a leader of Mlango Kubwa, if I'm the first person to throw stones to the police,
your constituents will do the same. They'll
so
follow your
it's
example.
up to me to act. Exactly, it's up to me to act responsibly. So if this system that from top people don't act responsibly, then it's a system of impunity that nothing will happen. I'll always have my senior protector.
Yep.
Really making Kenya, or are we really destroying our country?
I mean, this raises serious issues. Like you said, Mlango Kubwa is one of those areas where skirmishes and running battles between police and the residents has become normalized. I mean, we report it, we say, okay, the residents of Mlango Kubwa have complained, or there was a police operation and they're up in arms and they're complaining about the way the police conducted themselves. At some point, it becomes, part of the normal thing that the senior police officers will say, I mean, this is how we deal with the situation in Mlango Kubwa. When you raise the issues, I'm sure because you have addressed the issue of police brutality in Mlango Kubwa ward itself and even going to the officers in the national government, what do they respond? Just before even your incident, what kind of response have you been getting from police officers when you raise the issues of Mlango Kubwa?
I'd like to commend my station in Mlango Kubwa Pankuni Police Station. We have a very good relationship with OCPD because first they always emphasize on dialogue, and we've held enough meetings with them. So again, I would like to say not all police forces are bad. Okay, they are the ones who are actually understand this is how it's supposed to be done, and actually we find an equilibrium where we can coexist between my people and the police. So I don't want to generalize Of course, we have ones who are like really, really committed to their job and to, enforcing peace. But what I saw yesterday, I would say it's just a section of people who acted out of, I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to understand that it was wrong. But now it is even wrong when you see the senior also not like condemning the act directly, but justifying why it happened.
One of the problems, and I'm talking to you, Patricia, as well as you, Irungu, is yes, we shouldn't normalize it, but unfortunately, what has been seen in the public has been the normalization of this, so that even when you have cases of actual service to the people, they diminish in comparison to whatever else we see. Now, there are those who said it's the media who highlight it. Actually, it's our job to highlight it, but we're not highlighting falsehoods. These things are representative. Mm-hmm. So even as the Mheshimiwa tells us of the good relationship she has with the OCPD in the area that she represents, that seems to be the example you want to dismiss simply because it's an aberration. It is not what is considered the norm. Now, Irungu, one of the things that your organization does is you collect data and statistics and you understand these things. What percentage, if you look at the harm that we've seen being perpetrated by our police service, what percentage of mitigation would you say we have also seen vis-a-vis the perpetration of the harm?
So, CT, I think it's a great question. Before I address it, I think let me come back to this other point about, this is normal. It is not normal. It is only normal if we drop our moral compass, our ethical compass for what we expect as standards for the right to life in this country. Martin Luther King once spoke about the issue of being maladjusted, and he said he was proud to be maladjusted, which meant that he was never going to adjust to the inequality and injustice of his time. So I think we have to keep saying this is not normal, right? People, even if we see 5 car accidents in a week, that is not the normal way to drive a car.
Yep.
If I can just put an analogy.
Yep.
Coming back to your question, I think the key thing, I think there are a number of issues here. First of all, we know from the Director of Public Prosecutions that they have received 177 cases or complaints against police officers. 117, I think, of those cases are currently before courts. Mm-hmm. We know that there are thousands of complaints that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority have received, and yet we have seen no more than 15 convictions of police officers for either murder or serious crimes.
Yep.
We know from the Inspector General that he has been grappling with officers that are essentially found to be unfit to hold service, and one of those 4 officers that beat Honorable Mdeo was one of them. It's in the public domain if people would like to look up that, and that he was seen to be unfit to hold office in 2016, but he was then returned back to service by a court of law. So I think there are a number of things that we have to keep in mind, but we are definitely not seeing the zero tolerance that was announced about a month ago by the Inspector General and by the Interior Cabinet Secretary. And just to note, the clip that you ran is actually a very shortened clip of what he said yesterday afternoon. And in that afternoon, he spoke about this country not being a country of brutality. This is not a country that will accept this level of brutality. Now, I know there's a lot of skepticism about what he is going to be able to do about it, but I think it's important that political leaders continue to keep that statement in the public domain, and then what we must look for is enforcement of those statements in reality. So I think the whole nation is now watching to see what happens with these 4 officers. Will they be dismissed?
Yeah, what action will be taken?
What action will be taken? Will they be dismissed? Will they be brought to a court of law and charged with assault? This is what the nation now is waiting to see.
I think we shouldn't even be waiting for so long. I mean, this is something that should have started immediately. There's a comment here. Somebody says, police brutality unfortunately appears normal because the minister, Matiang'i, will issue tough statements, make a few shake-ups, an interdiction here, suspension there, and that's it. No deliberate systemic plans to clean up the service. A few months down the road, the same, again and again and again. And we will play another part of what the CS Matiang'i said yesterday out of this commercial break. We're getting into a short break at 28 minutes to 10 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Having a conversation with the MCA from Lango Kubwa Ward, Patricia Mudeo, who is in hospital, but she's being discharged today. She says she's feeling much better. And also the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, Irungu Houghton. Keep it right here. We'll seek your comments as well on social media, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Good morning. Okay, let's start with Kisumu. The roads are clear in Kisumu. Everything seems to be moving on quite well. There was an accident earlier on Red Hill Limuru Road Junction. I would like to know what's happening now there, but there was an accident earlier about 25 minutes ago. It was starting to cause some traffic build-up. Otherwise, the rest of the road is looking clear. Kiambu Road traffic is flowing well, and that's a good thing to hear. Mombasa Road as well. The accident that was there earlier at Lolongo has been cleared, and now the road is moving quite smoothly. Jogoo Road moving a bit better than it was moving an hour ago, and Thika Road is also improving. This is the situation that's on the road right now. Anything that you think we ought to alert other road users, 0719 012 600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. What CS Matiang'i is saying is, let's have a conversation, an all-rounded conversation. I don't condone violence by the police officers, but let's also be honest.
Yes, but what exactly
is this that is causing this violence?
But Eric, what exactly is he saying, really? I'm trying to understand, because that statement, it's difficult to get vaguer than that.
It sounds to me that in both of those clips, what the CS is saying is that there's an issue with the county assembly.
Acceptable, understood.
there's constant skirmish at the county assembly.
Yes.
That is requiring police officers to be deployed to the county assembly regularly.
Yes.
And let us not bury our heads in the sand, but address that as well.
Why doesn't he actually point out what it is that he's talking about? He's generalized it. You see, if you talk about he does not condone, I expected, I condemn in the strongest possible word, a nice generic term that people like using to distance themselves from such things, but I don't condone.
And I direct the IG of
yes. You see, when you talk about violence and the meting out of violence in the CBD, it's an occurrence when you have skirmishes and issues at the county hall, county assembly.
Yep.
But there are parts of this country, not this city, where they will tell you that the relationship with the police service is adversarial at best. That's the experience.
Yep.
That's their lived experience.
Yep.
Now, this is what I was suggesting and stating as being normal for these people. Now, this is what, in my opinion, needs to be addressed, because whatever habits are acquired in those particular regions is what we're seeing now playing out in the public domain. And the example being set by the senior officers themselves. So, where I would agree with Rungu, I would not blame the junior officers. If this is what, this is the example that the leader set.
The top boss.
Yes, and these are disciplined forces who are trained to actually obey orders. What is spoken. Now imagine what you need to do when it is actually done.
And Irongo and Patricia, you can come into this conversation at any moment that you wish to. What is it that happens to leaders then when they get to these positions? Because, listen, this is not new. Having covered the news and all over these years, this is something that you'll hear from police officers, even in ordinary conversations. Like, you know what, this is how these people behave. So we need to deal with them. This is how these youth behave. We need to deal with them this way. People need to understand that there is a law to be followed. People need to understand that there is law enforcement and there is order.
And then they proceed to break the very law that they're supposed to.
No, their justification is what exactly they're doing is enforcing law and order. And that
exactly.
they are right and you are wrong. What happens to people when they get to these positions?
I would defer to Honorable Mudeo to go first if she would like to intervene. Otherwise, I have a few thoughts.
Good. Patricia, go first.
Okay. One, it's not normal to have police inside the precincts of assembly because you have our own sergeant at arms who are supposed to quell any issue or any skirmishes that might arise inside the assembly. So one, it's not right. So definitely, we need to know who had given authorization for the police to come in the assembly. So one, it's not normal.
Irongo.
So that's also a question I want answered.
Yeah.
Two, it's not normal to attack someone who's just minding her own business. Two, it's not normal for me to get beaten like I've stolen something inside my place of work. It's not normal.
None of this is normal. What did you respond to what the CS is saying? Because the CS is saying, look,
honestly,
we see a lot of
He's trying to justify what happened. It happened because we can no longer discuss issues in that assembly. That it happened because we cannot maintain law and order. It happened because they were trying to protect. Who are they trying to protect?
The public.
If the people who are supposed to be protected. What is the assembly? How?
So I think we are losing Patricia as we try to speak to her. Yeah.
This was not caught on camera. Then on cameras, then that would have been a very bad misinformation to public. But thank God, it's all there. Anyone can be able to see that I was all alone.
Yep.
Which is wrong. As leaders, we should learn to say the truth.
There's no logical explanation to what was happening.
Exactly. Honestly, there is no logical explanation. And that is what is tormenting me, trying to get answers.
Irongo.
I think, Honorable Mudeo, you deserve a public apology by the Cabinet Secretary for Interior that would be a first start. The second is essentially action to be taken on the 4 officers. And thirdly, you can consider your legal rights to sue those officers for an assault on your person. So I think these would be the options. I think as Amnesty International, we are committed to everybody having a dignified and a safe experience in this country. And I think in the same way that we will uphold your right to not be beaten and assaulted by police officers, I think it's important to realize that the County Assembly is a place of parliamentary deliberation. It is not a place to throw chairs. It's not a place to storm offices. It is not a place to threaten and use inflammatory language. And I think the county members of County Assembly at various times have been using this. I think this is what the Interior Secretary is speaking to.
Okay.
And Kenyans have to say that we did not elect you to be violent. One of the things that worries me most about this incident, beyond just the violence that we saw against you, Honorable Muzeo, is that this begins a trend towards violent politics leading up to the 2022 election. And we have to say that at this time we need to review security measures, not just for the County Assembly of Nairobi, but for other county assemblies where we've seen violence in the last month or so. The second possible way forward would be to involve the Senate, I think State House, and also the Council of Governors need to weigh in very quickly and help mediate a non-resolution to the problems at the Nairobi County. Because I think the issues are not just at the level of the impeachment of Beatrice Elachi.
Yep.
It is also to do with the configuration of the Nairobi Metropolitan Service and Governor Sonko. So I think these are complex matters that cannot just be left to boil over as they did as they have in the last few weeks.
I agree with you, actually. It's because what we are seeing now, even if we didn't have the violence meted out on Honorable Muzeo, we could have just treated what was happening in the County Assembly as one of those things that we're used to, drama at the County Assembly. And you've raised the issue, Irongo, of the expectation of the electorate on their leaders, the conduct of the MCAs and the leadership of the County Assembly of Nairobi, or even the executive of Nairobi, and what we keep seeing. Why would there be this kind of skirmishes in a building and in a house that is expected to be a house of political debate with decorum? So then the question now that I'd like to ask you is, as we talk about there needs to be some resolution to this conflict, You've mentioned, yes, the State House needs to come in at some point, the Council of Governors needs to come in at some point, the Senate needs to come in at some point. But what's the genesis of the problem that we're having? Is it possible for us to go back and ask ourselves, where did the rain start beating Nairobi, and address it from that point?
So one of the things that I think has been utilized in many ways is I don't think there has been, sufficient, if any, investment in building a civic culture that is able to engage, politicians, is able to engage policies, and be able to hold those that we elect or those that are appointed to serve us accountable. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what is missing. I think the opportunity was missed with the county government of Kidero, that of Sonko, and I think for the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, although we are seeing a lot of work in terms of the delivery of projects, there is virtually little that is happening to build a democratic, civic, non-violent culture that is able to hold county government accountable, but at the same time to produce the kind of leadership that will go beyond this moment. And I think one of the biggest dangers, if I was sitting in the Nairobi right now, would be the issue of succession. There is no sense that any of the investment that they are making in terms of road infrastructure or water and sanitation, that these will be safeguarded by a democratic leadership that is accountable, that is not corrupt, and is able to openly and in an accountable way manage the affairs of Nairobi. And I think that is where the bigger question is, or to quote you, that is where the rain started hitting us.
Yep.
And secondly, it will continue to beat on us.
If I may just sort of like pick up from what you've said, you see, quite aside from what civic education and whatever education, psychological training the police may need, but do we really genuinely equip our police service with everything they need to actually carry out the duties that are demanded of them?
I think it was last month the Principal Secretary for the Ministry of Interior spoke about changing the criteria for the appointment of police officers, and he began to intimate that they will begin to only take graduates, so that the level of education would be much higher. And I think this is an important conversation. We would argue that besides education, there really needs to be clarity around the ethical nature of officers. So, for example, at the moment, it gives me the sense that many officers take pride in their levels of firmness, their levels of aggression, their ability to hammer with electricity poles anybody that they think is breaking the law, rather than see themselves as stewards of the public, as guardians of the public. The British have spent a lot of time developing what they call the Bobby on the beat. The Bobby on the beat essentially is your officer. He is known to you. He has a geographical area that he operates in, and he is expected to really just be there to support the public. And in many times, people don't fear calling them. At the moment, looking at the national crime statistics, less than 5% of the country actually reports crime to the police. Now, there is no way we can bring down violent crimes or economic crimes if we are not creating a sense of confidence and trust in those officers that are wearing uniforms to serve us.
Rongu, when you have cases, and not one or two, but repeated cases of where the police are reported as being complicit in the actual commission of the crimes themselves. You see, this is the power of representation. They don't need to be 10. If even just one case is reported, believe me, it will obfuscate 100 others that represented some very, very positive things. And the reason is because of the expectations due to the service that is expected to be received from this force. If people expect that they will receive security and the experience is different, then we can say all we like, but what people are going to go by is what they have experienced, or what they have read, or what others they know have experienced. That's why I asked the question. Let me rephrase it. Are there steps that are being taken to ensure that we equip our police service adequately to meet the tasks that we demand of them?
I think the best person to answer that question would be the Inspector General of the Police, followed by the Cabinet Secretary of Interior. From where we sit as Amnesty International, we know that there are three things that really work in terms of improving the professionalism of the police. The first is that they are kept constantly aware of the fact that being a police officer is not a privilege. It is actually a duty that is bestowed to them under certain laws in this republic, and their behavior is completely conditional on that. If they break that oath of office that they take, they should be removed immediately or retrained and given an opportunity to serve differently. The second thing is that community policing, building civic police relationships, is what brings down the level of violence. The third is that not everything is a policing issue. Crime is actually a consequence of inequality, gross inequalities, and a sense of hopelessness for those on the poorer spectrum, that they will ever be able to have a life of dignity and comfort. And I think we saw, I've heard many times in places like Mlango Kubwa and Mathare and others, that when we had a strong public works program under the National Youth Service before the cartels and all that in greaters is not gold destroyed that program, we had a reduction in crime rate. So I think the other thing we have to say is that the police cannot police inequalities. They cannot police poverty. That is the work of other government agencies.
Yeah, true.
And where they fail, the police are actually being put in a position where they have to police their way out of a dysfunctional economy.
True. There's a comment here. Someone says, police violence is not getting worse. It's just getting filmed. And Patricia, I want to come to you and ask you, even from the statistics that Irongo started giving us earlier about violence among women legislators globally, this is an area of concern even for Amnesty International. They've recorded this. Talking about violence on women leaders, very many people look up to you, Patricia. They see that you've been elected by the people of Mlango Kubwa. You have become an MCA. You also play other roles in leadership positions in various other organizations. And then they see this kind of violence. It becomes, they get discouraged of wanting to get into politics. What would you say to the women who look up to you? They're thinking of getting into leadership, and then they see the kind of violence being meted on women leaders?
I'd say maybe this is one of such scenarios, and they should never give up. One of them will never let you lose hope, or they should always be courageous. And I look forward, and I hope action will be taken, and not because of me, so that it can create, a source of encouragement to any woman who want to take up any leadership positions, and also to serve as an example to anyone or any police force who want to perpetrate what they did to me. Because if we leave that unattended, then we are really discouraging any, not only even women, even men. We all need to be protected.
Indeed.
Because it's just not me. I carry, a big family behind my back.
Yeah. So action really must be taken, and action must be seen to be taken and be taken on the officers that perpetrated this, and also the service itself. The service itself should rise up to the occasion. The government ought to come to you. Like Irongo said, you deserve a public apology for this, for what happened to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patricia Mudeo, MCA for Mlango Kubwa Ward. And it's good to hear that you'll expect to be discharged today to go home and recuperate from home and continue serving the people of Mlango Kubwa. Again, our sincere empathy with you for what you've gone through. But we urge you, like you've said, urging the other leaders, keep the fight.
Yeah.
And CT, say goodbye to them and to Irongo as well.
Mheshimiwa Patricia and Irongo, thank you very, very much for your contribution.
Thank you, CT.
Yes.
And also, Honorable Mudeo, we see you. We empathize with you. Please do not lose hope. And to all your constituents in Mlango Kubwa, an injustice happened 2 days ago. But we have seen it, and we seek justice also alongside you for your member of County Assembly.
Thank you so much.
Asante sana, and have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.
You too.
Thank you.
4 minutes to 10 o'clock. The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Coming to the end of the show shortly. Let's take a quick break.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
As we conclude today's show, let's sample some of the comments on social media. Somebody saying, I back the police on this. MCAs have become a disgrace in this country. Their behavior is basically thuggish. Kennedy Aringo says, MCAs love scenes like that. The ordeal has made this particular MCA popular now. But remember, you asked for it. You went against the law, evicting the Speaker Elachi.
Hey.
Trying to justify it by
mature,
saying,
intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Because the minute we do, we lose our moral compass as a nation. And the rain started hitting us in Nairobi when
mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Corrupt people to continue leading them. So it's about the decision that you make at the ballot. As we conclude, CT, yours. Closing remarks.
Some of those statements are definitely not things of beauty because they lack the facts. If you are beautiful, but learn to work, for you cannot eat your beauty. You see, beauty, I'm taking the view and the explanation that it is something generally acceptable and considered to be good. And why is it considered to be good? Because its benefits can clearly be seen. If your actions are beautiful, it means that what you're doing is the right thing and it meets with an approval. And that you can certainly eat, because if it's in the workplace, then you will certainly continue working. But if all you think of is not doing what you're supposed to do, which brings about the beauty, then you will have nothing to eat. You see, police brutality is not beautiful. That's not how you look at it. But in equal measure, when you condemn a situation without fully understanding what it's all about and considering what the reality of the situation is and bringing in your own biases, that in itself is also not a thing of beauty. Your contribution to that particular conversation is most definitely not a thing of beauty. Yes.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tomorrow being a Friday, we'll have more interesting conversations as well to have. Between now and 3 o'clock, listen to uninterrupted music on Spice FM, Sugar and Spice and everything nice. And then Monique will be here to take you home on Spice Drive from 3 to 7 and from 7 to 10, the adults in the room. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.